Roll call, please. And Director Pinkham is home ill with child and an ill child today.
Director Burke,
Present.
Director DeWolf,
Present.
Director Geary,
Present.
Director Mack,
Present.
Director Patu, Director Harris.
Present. Those that wish to stand, please do. Those that wish to sit, please do. Pledge of Allegiance. Don't believe we have a student performance this evening. And please appreciate that the student performances take a toll on the schools, arranging for transportation, coaching, rehearsals, etc. So understandable. So, Madam Superintendent, the floor is yours.
All right, thank
Boom.
you, Madam President, and good to be here again with all of you. I just want to start out with a little statement about an email we received recently from the Council on American Islamic Relations, Washington, pointing out that our communication to families regarding the upcoming state testing did not provide sufficient support or information for families and students who observe Ramadan. I'd like to apologize for that misstep. It was not our intention. In fact, we did meet with faith-based organizations this past fall, and as a result, we're very attentive to the needs of diverse religious practices when determining start of school dates and testing information. The Washington State scheduled testing window overlaps with Ramadan, and we cannot adjust that schedule. However, we can and have provided accommodation recommendations to principals. We recognize an important aspect of observing Ramadan is fasting. And while we were not clear enough in our communications about accommodations, we are not recommending students or families forego an important part of their faith practice. Our expectation is that school leaders will work in partnership with families to make accommodations that best meet the unique needs of each school community and students observing Ramadan. We have revised our communication supports to school leaders, so I just want to make sure that that was publicly stated. And now I'll go into my usual types of remarks. I've been out to a lot of schools lately for the last few weeks. I'm still on track to have visited all of our schools by the end of May, so that's pretty exciting. It's nice to get around and see things that are going on in classrooms. This PE class at Sandpoint Elementary, first we're doing PE-like activities, and then their teacher was teaching them different bones in the body, and so they had this song about bones that they sang, and it was super cute. The new bone they were learning that day was phalanges. I hope you all know. Yeah, there you go. And so I told them, I asked them what the funniest bone in their body was, and then I had to say the humerus. Yes. I was also interviewed by Vilia at Sandpoint. She asked me about compromise. They did a whole school video about compromise. It was super cute. They did school-wide kinds of issues talking about what that meant. This group was working on a CCC lesson, very engaged in their lesson at Olympic View. These two Olympic View students were independently practicing their vocabulary words, so I was trying to interrupt them. These center school musicians played a song while I visited called No More Heroes. They were super talented, and it was really, really fun to watch them practice for an event they were having about a school-wide art event.
Did you play anything?
No, I did not. And given that it's Music Appreciation or Music Month in schools, was a good thing to be in that classroom. This science class at Cascade Parent Partnership quizzed me a bit about the Salish Sea. That's why I have a quizzical look on my face. This is Stephen from Leshai. He and some of his peers are leading the equity team in their school. Their first ask when they're visiting with adults is to listen more and talk less. And I just think that's great advice for all of us to heed. This Leshai student was showing me her coding lesson. So they were coding in class and making great little activities for people to follow. Some of the staff I met, Principal Roberts and Counselor Manzo led the lunchroom in the Sandpoint theme song while I was there. It has its own dance that goes with it. It was so very, very cute. Did you dance? I didn't know the dance, but it's something I think we can all try to learn. Principal Bean showed me around Olympic View, and there was just a lot of learning going on there. And so it's always nice to see school principals in their element and see the work they're doing with the teachers and the learning that's happening in their school. Principal DeBell and her team shared Olympic Hills, where I got to see the Global Reading Challenge in action in their school. And thank you to Seattle Public Libraries. They also had the 100th day celebration while I was there. Kindergartners created 100-day charts, and they filled them up with different objects like Lucky Charms or jelly beans, so that they had their number sense down and also were able to do a gallery walk around their classrooms. Dr. Casey enthusiastically gave me a tour of Center School. The art in that place is pretty amazing. Principal Flo showed me around Ingram High School, home of the Rams. This is when they were in the state tournament, so I even got to be on the morning announcements to cheer on the boys basketball team. And if you look at that engaged bunch, it's really an amazing, amazing group there. That's all of you. Here we are diving into the strategic plan during our recent retreat. Principal Gander and I toured around Cascade Parent Partnership. This school serves our homeschool students for a class or two, and many of them actually go full day. And so it's an interesting parent partnership area. I met Robin on her last day with Seattle Public Schools. She has served 25 years and provided a lot of great service to staff and teachers in our district, and so I was really pleased to see her on her last day. She's very excited. I met with all of the principals to start sharing our strategic plan. They are very excited with the focus, intentional focus on African American males. We had a lot of good conversation about it. Principal Talbert showed me around Orca K-8, and this is Miss Merritt, who is about to be 80, probably this week. She stays young by teaching kindergarten students. She's the most sought-after kindergarten teacher in the school. Parents love her, students love her, and she's just really there, and it keeps her young. The focus on equity was very obvious as Principal Clater showed me around Leschi. Principal Talbot is so proud of the Lowell programs. They have interesting student body. Their school has a 50% turnover in students since the first day this year. Her team's working hard to build strong connections with students and families many of who are living in transition. And so I think she's a great leader placed in that school, trying to really build the system out. Our future, let's see, where did it go? Oh, community. Our future teachers from the Seattle Teacher Residency Program, and I was really fortunate to run into them during my visit at Olympic Hills. They were learning about student conferencing with students, very powerful learning, and then they were stepping out of that classroom to actually go practice conferencing. And so, again, this is just a great partnership we have growing, helping us to develop a more diverse teaching force, and so just really glad to see them in action. Councilmember Gonzalez and Johnson stopped by for a visit about our city partnership through FEP, and I want to thank them for their commitment to Seattle Public School students and learning about our processes as it works its way through the city council process now. I held a second family meeting at Licton Springs K-8. We discussed data in their school, climate data, academic data, and also had a conversation about what it means to be Native focused. And just want to thank Director Pinkham for joining at that meeting. Mayor Durkin, Dr. Sheila Edwards-Lang, Principal Howard, and Caleb, who is a Garfield student to my left in that picture. We answered questions about Seattle Promise at one of their community meetings. And so again, thankful for the partnership that we have and the great things that can happen and the promising opportunities for our students. This is another gander at a great smart, brilliant group coming together. This is our first off-site work session at Garfield, and where we're learning about the BEX 5 next steps. I visited with our partners from Seattle Housing Authority. We're tackling the issue of chronic absenteeism with them and working really closely in partnership with them. And so this is just an example of one of the things when we can build it, it can actually really move the dial on important things like absenteeism. And then I also spoke at the Team Read Luncheon, which is another great Seattle Public School partner doing great work. If you haven't been to a Team Read site yet, you should attend, because it is this program where young elementary students are paired with a high school student who then, it develops into a mentorship type of relationship, but it's all steeped in learning and reading, and it's really cool stuff. And so just want to thank Team Read for their partnership as well. And Madam President, that's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Quick question for you on the Seattle Promise visits. Did the concept of FEP funds going to charter schools come up? And if so, what came up?
Yes, that question's been asked several times, and I think it was Director Mack or Director Gary at one of the FEP Levy Oversight Committee meetings made a direct question about it, and the answer is yes. Charter schools will be not the Seattle Promise. So right now, the Seattle Promise is designated particularly for just Seattle Public School graduates, but the K-12 funding can be granted out to charter schools.
Thank you. Okay, we have reached the point of our agenda for board committee reports. Who would like to go first? Director Geary, thank you so much.
Sure. So one of the committees, of course, is the Strategic Plan Steering Committee. And as anybody who's looked at the agenda can see, we have that up for introduction tonight. So I just wanted, and we saw the slide of us, the board working on the strategic plan. So I wanted to thank everybody here for the work that they've put into it recently and taking my calls and sharing your thoughts so that we can put together a strategic plan that everybody feels, I'm sure everybody has the perfect strategic plan, but this is the one that hopefully will reflect the input to the point where you feel it's a good direction that we as a board united can put our district on its way. And I apologize for being a little flat. I have a bit of a headache. I'm into the legislative committee. I'm going to leave that to Director Mack because she has some input on that. And then in terms of curriculum and instruction, we'll be meeting on the 19th. I went over the agenda in our last board meeting, so I won't do that again, but it is posted. Certainly I've been getting a lot of emails about the science curriculum adoption. And so I'm sure there will be some discussion about that, as well as the online learning policies. And so I ask all of you, to the extent that you would like me to keep your concerns in mind at the committee meeting, please share those with me, and then I can fairly raise them to our staff at that time. And then we had a quarterly meeting, a new practice that we're doing, which is the curriculum and instruction and operations committee chairs and chiefs are going to be meeting so that we can do a better job of coordinating those issues that intersect between our two different groups. And even in that discussion, we realized that perhaps student services should join us from time to time. I'm sure they'd appreciate being brought in on that as well. But our hope being that we can coordinate things in terms of programming and enrollment so that as those issues come up, we don't discover that there have been concerns that have been siloed, but rather an opportunity to share them for better planning in the long run. And of course, if Director Mack has anything more on that, she can share at the time. So that's it for now.
Director Mack.
Good evening. I have 4 different roles to cover, I think. So legislative rep, Director Geary and I share that role. Update on that is, I took notes. So we have a conference call every Friday with staff to get a kind of an update on where things are at and what we're doing. We're close to another cutoff in the legislative session, so that bills are starting to die. There are some things that are still alive. And we continue to advocate on various things, including special education funding and raising the levy authority. We're watching some other bills, including the teacher retention or teacher workforce diversity bill 1139. I think that's made it through and is still alive. There's an ethnic studies bill which would create a task force at OSPI level, I believe it is. And that's still alive. It started in the Senate, made it through the Senate, and it's been referred to the Ed Committee. And then there's a couple, and actually I think we did sign in pro on that at one point. And then there's some delinking graduation bills that are still alive that we're just monitoring to see what's going to be happening with them. And the school construction and assistance program bill, I believe, made it all the way through the Senate, but I'm not sure if it even has a hearing in the House yet. That's 5853, and we testified at length on that bill. We're, because WASDA, WASA, WASBO had to cancel their day on the Hill because of the snow. I'm sorry. WASDA, Washington State School Directors Association, that's us, school board directors, and then WASA, which is the Superintendent Association, and then WASBO, which is the business officials, so the CFOs of each of the districts organization. Those 3 organizations have a day on the Hill. It got canceled because of the snow. And so we are rescheduling for a number of different days, and they're not all on the same day because we couldn't coordinate that much. So we're planning to go down next Thursday on the 21st. We haven't actually set up our meetings yet. We're in the process of doing that, but I believe Director Geary and Director DeWolf will be joining me, and I'm hoping that there will be perhaps some other senior staff that can join us as well from Seattle schools. So we're hopeful that there will be some movement in the legislature to provide some more funding, and we continue to advocate on that. There's no new news on the FEP, the Family Education Preschool and Promise, the city's levy oversight committee since last go round. We have another meeting next week, I believe it is. Ops committee is happening tomorrow, and it is a packed agenda, very exciting. We have a bunch of board action reports coming through related to various construction of a number of schools that are in process. Very exciting that those projects are moving forward. We're also going to be having some robust policy discussion around H13, which is our capacity management policy, and the facilities master plan policy. We continue working on those policies and to improve the process and communication. And as Director Geary mentioned, we had this meeting, and much of our conversation was kind of around the overlap of these issues between curriculum and learning and operations, and how can we keep that all in mind as we're working on improving these policies. And let's see what else. There's also special attention items on our grant funds. Oh, and actually the most fun is going to be the budget review. So capital budget conversation of what's actually on next year's capital budget. And we'll be providing input, and then that'll come to the full board in one of the budget work sessions later. Some updates on things that happened because of the snow around construction. Some of our projects may have a little delays, and we're going to get an update on that, as well as an update on the transportation issues and kind of what we're doing around those. So it's going to be an exciting meeting tomorrow. Very much looking forward to it. The BEX BTA Oversight Committee also met this past week on Friday. Director Geary and I are also members of that together. And their agenda. Yes, the BEX and BTA. It is an acronym. BEX BTA. BEX is the Building Excellence Levy. BTA is the Buildings, Technology, and Academics or Athletics. I'm not sure. I think it's gotten used interchangeably. Both of those levies and their major capital projects, this oversight committee is tasked with providing oversight and recommendations around the implementation of the levies. They don't do the planning of the levies. They do the kind of implementation going forward and kind of watching as projects move forward. Citizens with lots of expertise around architecture and construction management, and it is a really great committee. Lots of great expertise and robust conversations. All of the meeting minutes, et cetera, are online. And this past meeting was, they got to have the update of the draft capital levy implementation plan that we discussed in work session last week as well. And also had some other conversations around project statuses, et cetera, and they always talk about the budget and what's going on. And one of the interesting things that came up in conversation that I think they'll be talking about further was they were asking the question of why the implementation plan is not a formally approved board plan. And so it was really kind of an interesting conversation around whether or not it should be a board-approved document or not. I think they were interested in potentially having that conversation and weighing in with a recommendation at some point. So that's a TBD conversation, but lots of smart people in that room and lots of great input. And they provide really good oversight on our projects going forward. So I think that's it. Thank you.
Any other committee or liaison input? Executive committee continues to roll along. We continue to be updated by staff. We continue to fashion the agenda and move forward. There's nothing particularly sexy in the last couple of ones, more administrative and ministerial. At this point, I'd like to welcome Rachel Anderson from Garfield High School. Rachel is a junior. She is the ASB secretary of the class of 2020. She's involved with unified sports at Garfield. She's in the National Honor Society and on the student board for Crossout Cancer and Water First International. In her spare time, she enjoys running, and in the future, she hopes to go into the nonprofit sector or hopes to study medicine. The floor is yours. Tell us about yourself. Tell us about your school. Tell us about your academic career, what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and what we as board members should know.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm Rachel. I'm a junior at Garfield. You said I participate in unified sports, which is where students in the general education program get to participate in sports with kids in the individualized education program, and it's a really cool opportunity for us to develop friendships when we usually can't, since we don't have that many classes together. One thing about unified sports is that we don't get funding from Garfield. So this season is our soccer season, but we don't have a coach, so I don't know if we're going to be able to participate, which is a big bummer because this is a really cool opportunity for a lot of students at our school. For things I want to see at Garfield, I would say increased access to technology is really important. It's a really big part of our society, and it's growing in importance. But a lot of students at our school don't have access to that at home. and it's required in school. So I think a 1-to-1 ratio of iPads or laptops to students would be that would be great. Another thing I've noticed is that I take a lot of AP classes at Garfield, but even in the classes that I do take that are not AP, the education that we receive often does not include all backgrounds. It's quite Eurocentric, and a lot of narratives are left out. And it's crucial that in a society that is as diverse as ours, and in a school that is as diverse as Garfield, that we learn about each other's backgrounds and not just someone that looks like me. Another thing that's pretty important is that school is really stressful, especially for people applying to colleges, if that's the path they choose to take. And I think it's important that we have more conversation centered around mental health and dealing with the stress of school, because a lot of people have other things going on in their life other than school as well, and it could be really hard. I am not a part of music at my school, although I wish I did. I quit the saxophone after 8th grade, but we don't have a band teacher right now. And at Garfield, music is really important. We have a really rich history of music. We had Quincy Jones attend our school, Jimi Hendrix, etc. And I think it's a really important aspect in our school, and a lot of students that are interested in pursuing music don't have a mentor or guide right now. Speaking on education, or I'm going to go back to lack of diverse education. We have a lack of diversity in teachers. We have very few teachers of color, and I can name probably 2 black teachers. And in a school as diverse as Garfield, it's important that our staff also reflects the diversity of our student body. I'm doing my best to speak on this topic, because obviously it doesn't affect me as much as a white person, but Garfield is a very diverse school, and we need representation. One of our only ethnic studies teacher, Mr. Hagopian, he worked on a book called Teaching for Black Lives, and I think it's a really awesome book. I think every educator in the district should be required to read it. I would just give that advice, because it's very important. What else do I want to talk about? I'm in the AP Environmental Science class, which I absolutely love. It's my favorite class I'm taking this year. And I think it would be really cool if the district came up with more environmentalism-related policies. I don't know how exactly you would do that, but I think more funding for composting. This is kind of a reach, but solar panels, renewable energy, I think that would be really cool. What else? Yeah, those are just a few things that I thought I would mention. And I can't really think of anything else at this time. So if you have any questions, I would love to answer them.
This board always has questions. Director DeWolf.
Thank you, President Harris. My question is, how did you get into or an interest in obviously environmental science, and what ideas do you have for us to encourage other students to get involved as well?
Yeah. Well, I actually didn't know that much about environmental science until some of my friends who were upperclassmen last year took the class and said they absolutely loved it. So I decided I wanted to take it, and I've learned so much. I would really encourage any other student to take it, even if they aren't thinking of going into a career related to environmental science. I think it's really important for us all to be educated on climate change, on how we can treat our world better. I don't know how I would encourage other students other than that. I think if we want to see our world last longer than, the end of this century, I think it's important that everyone takes the class and starts adjusting their own actions. I don't know if that answers your question.
Other directors have questions? Director Burke?
I just wanted to say thanks for joining us.
Oh, yeah, thanks for having me.
And I really appreciate your perspective. It's always amazing to have student voice here at this level on this day. And then we also get to talk about it. And I just wanted to echo some of the things you said and highlight that the district is working on some of those around the environmental. And we can't even credit the amazing people here, I think, other than Director Patu. The board previous to us enacted a green resolution for all of our building projects. So every building project that we do, all of the ones that will be on BEX 5, will include energy-saving things, using natural light, using natural heat recovery systems and energy efficiency, and including a path to net zero, which we generally can't fund, but we try to build it into the building infrastructure that includes solar. So it's really cool, and I appreciate you bringing that to the surface.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Director Geary?
Thank you so much for coming. It was nice that you started with your participation in Unified. It's something that is really near and dear to me. It's my understanding there should be some money for coaches, so I will see what I can do about that for you.
Awesome.
Do you know if anybody has contacted athletics for assistance with money for a coach?
I'm not the president of the club, but I'll have to check in. I know I believe we have been looking
Okay.
for a coach, but I haven't been able to find one.
Because it's two issues. One, finding a coach, and then getting the funds. And it's not much, but it's a stipend. So we'll see what we can do to help out with that.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
Ideas for college and preparation for college, and do you feel well prepared for college? And given yesterday's news with respect to the rich folks cheating, where are you at on that journey?
Right, so I'm a junior this year. I actually just got back from college tours in California. Yes, I'm really excited about that. I toured the Claremont colleges and absolutely fell in love with them. So that's my goal. I do feel pretty well prepared for college based on the classes that I've taken. Yeah,
Terrific. You should know that you are invited to stay until the bitter end. You are also invited to ask questions when the rest of the board members do, when action items and introduction items are presented, and also to provide feedback to public testimony.
great,
So
thank you.
consider yourself anointed.
Thanks.
Okay. So, we have reached the consent portion of tonight's agenda. May I have a motion for said consent agenda.
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Do any directors have any items that they wish to remove from the consent agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor of passing the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Seeing none. Okay. We are moving through it. We have a time check now of 40 minutes before public comments start. So this is the time that board directors get to reflect to the community and to the world at large on Channel 26. Who would like to go first? Director DeWolf.
I'd be happy to, President Harris, because I want to read a poem. I just want to forewarn you, it's from one of our students at Leshai. So if we have a few more extra minutes, I want to be able to just elevate their poem. So
We have extra minutes, doesn't mean
I
we
know I will
go
read
forever.
I will read very fast. I
Thank
promise.
you, kind sir.
So just first, as a citizen of the Chippewa Cree Nation of Rocky Bow, Montana, I do want to recognize that we are on stolen indigenous land. I am honored to live, work, and serve here in the Coast Salish territories in the city of Chief Sealth, who was a descendant of the Suquamish, the Muckleshoot, and the Duwamish. In addition to Superintendent Juneau's remarks, what I hope to acknowledge, at least here publicly, is the supreme mistake our district made. I want to reassure you, we have heard the feedback about our communications and lack of cultural awareness as it pertains to our students who observe Ramadan. While the testing window is prescribed by the state, we apologize for the ways our communications asked you to more or less abandon your faith traditions and customs on your most holy and important holiday. So we will do better and apologize for the harm given and felt by our actions. I also wanted to just elevate something. Each year we get a new committee assignment, and I'm really grateful I get to sit on the ops committee, not only just to get to bear witness to what we know as the wonkiest wonk that ever wonked around policy, but also just to share in the governance with my colleague, Director Mack. We are excited to continue having our conversations about our workforce and the pursuit of values and ideals prescribed by a Community Workforce Agreement, and our first CWA work session is on April 3rd, and we really look forward to that. Also just wanted to thank the Seattle World School Advocates for a really great conversation about the effective and meaningful education model that they have at Seattle World School. And then also just a ton of gratitude to our SPS family here for being able to deliver on one of our board goals and promises for having our first in-community work session at District 5's own Garfield High School last week. I recognize whether it's sound or anything else that we may have felt we would like to improve upon. Please let us know your feedback as we want to be better for our next time. But just so you know, we're really excited to have that board goal and to be able to deliver on that promise, and we'll look forward to those meetings again in the future. I was grateful to visit Principal Mark Perry today at Nova High School. Spent a lot of time. Again, I love Nova, but also just going to tour and hear more about the school, and we'll just continue to advocate for him and Nova High School's 24-to-1 model that seems really effective, and hope we can find ways to address and support that. And finally, this last weekend, actually it's not finally, that's a lie, I'm sorry, I have like 5 more comments here, but I held a joint community meeting with Director Burke this weekend at the Fremont Library, which is my first time at the Fremont Library, gorgeous place. And was left feeling fairly concerned about some of the ongoing issues at Washington Middle School and our Amplify Science adoption process. So I will be somewhat troubling to me, actually, so I'll be tracking those very closely as we move forward with those processes. And just to reiterate what Director Mack already said, we're visiting state legislature next week, and we'll relentlessly and aggressively make our case for either lifting the levy cap or providing the gap between what our new students need and deserve and what the state provides. It's about a $60 million gap that the state is leaving to us to pay for. And then just grateful for a conversation that Director Burke and I were able to have with our friends, Commissioners Bowman and Calkins at the port, to talk about students, internships, and apprenticeships, and hopefully we'll have some more conversations in the future about that. And then this Friday, I'm actually going to be visiting Principal Howard at Garfield High School, so I'll probably see you again. Always enjoy going out to visit him and having a tour there. I actually got through this pretty quickly, President Harris. I only have 2 more. So the other thing, The other thing I was going to say is in my day job, I work in youth and young adult homelessness, and one of the things that we are constantly exploring are the ways that both the systems that have been created in our country and in our communities, and even for my example, we're working on a youth homelessness campaign. And often these institutions and these campaigns and these ideas come from a place of deep, really white supremacy and the ways that it can show up in work culture. And so I'm really excited because I know we have a March 30th board retreat, a racial equity retreat, and hope we can explore some of the things that we've been exploring at my day job, which is just how white supremacy actually integrates itself into work culture. And some of the ways that that shows up is perfectionism, this always sense of urgency, defensiveness, quantity over quality, paternalism, fear of open conflict, and more. And so I know that those are in all of our workplace cultures, and hope we can explore those on our March 30th time. So now we've made it to the final end. I only took 6 minutes, President Harris. Just take 30 seconds more. So this is a poem by Rudy Bradford at Leschi Elementary, and it's just called Let Me Be Me. And I'd just like to elevate the students who write in our schools and give them an opportunity to have their work in the record. So excited to do that today for Ruby from Leschi Elementary. It's called Let Me Be Me. Let me be me again. Let me be the happy girl I used to be. Let me fly free in the wind like a red bird. I don't want to hear your mean words. I am never me to me. Let me be that sparkling star I was. Let me be the gem who was truly loved when I had a choice of what to wear or an option of how to do my hair. I have never been beautiful to me. Let me be the imperfect mess I was before. Let me be the girl who doesn't want more, but you won't. You won't let me be me, and I surely don't feel free. I have never been me to me. Thank you, Ruby, for your words, and also this really great book that we put out through the program of Seattle Arts and Cultures called Writers in the Schools. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next? Director Burke.
I will follow up, and since Director DeWolf and I have spent a little bit of time at a couple of events recently, it shortens my comments. Thank you for teeing those up. So I want to start by mentioning the board retreat that we had with board and senior staff on March 2nd. And we talked about different elements of board and staff collaboration and board collaboration, and then also the strategic plan. And so I think the feedback that I got from my colleagues and from staff was, that's a pretty good start, but there's more work to do. So figuring out how we move forward, build trust, reinforce trust, work on common goals. I think there was a lot of positivity there, and I think we found some specific things to work on. That work is going to be carried forward in the executive committee under policy 1620 for the next few months. So I will keep people updated either in my board comments or through the work of the committee. So thank you for that to everybody who participated, board and staff alike. It was, like I said, a great start to work that needs to happen. Director DeWolf mentioned our work session at Garfield. I'm also proud that we were able to take that to the community, and thanks to Garfield for hosting. We had a meeting this week, myself and Director Geary, with the Fair Start folks. They're an amazing organization. We met with Diane DeBacker and some of the SPS CTE team. Can you spell Fair Start? F-A-R-E-S-T-A-R-T, fair like the food. So they've been providing highly successful programs for our opportunity youth. And we were talking about, there are two of our schools now, and so we were talking about how their programs are working, what do CTE partnerships look like. Really, really exciting conversation there. Just an announcement about Lincoln High School. Website got updated, and I know this is something that's on people's mind. There's a countdown timer on there now, 174 days, 15 hours, 54 minutes to opening. So thanks to the DOTS team as well for putting that together. Another side comment, but the very important one for you math fans. Those of you who are watching the calendar know that tomorrow is March 14th. That's 3.14. That's Pi Day. So I encourage people to eat a pie and do some math. Make a pie, eat a pie, all of those things. You know, it ties together the culinary, the math, and you know, it is my kind of day. I just love it. I had the pleasure of joining the Licton Springs community Monday this week at their PTO meeting because unfortunately I was out of town when Superintendent Juneau and Director Pinkham visited, so I wanted to stop by and hear some of the concerns and learn how their community is forming around that, so that I appreciate them hosting me. And then the community meeting that was at the Lincoln Library, the Fremont Library. Will be at the Lincoln Library soon, I hope. But essentially 4 topics came up. One of them was around science and the science adoption. One was around Washington Middle School. We had comments around the budget, had a good discussion around that, and then the enrollment projections. More conversation than we could fit in the time available, but I'm always grateful when people are willing to take part of their Saturday to come out and talk. It's hugely insightful. My next community meeting is not yet booked, but I'll try to get a couple of months blocked out by next week.
Next up, Director Mack.
I was curious to know, because I was excited about Pi Day tomorrow, how far you can recite it. I think my daughter can go up to 10 digits. I can do 3.1415. 926. So you can do 3 more than I can. Okay. Anyway, Pi Day is very exciting.
Every couple of years you lose a decimal.
I have been remiss and not planned any community meetings. It's been really, really busy, and I haven't managed to do that. I've had some personal home challenges that have kind of gotten in the way, so I apologize for not doing that. I might. I will look into that. I really appreciate you coming today and talking about Garfield and the things you brought up. I was not aware that there hasn't been a band teacher at Garfield. And that to me is deeply problematic because the most important thing in our schools is having educators and having our schools complete. So I'm curious to know why that's the way it is. So thanks for bringing that up, as well as the environmental focus that you talked about. I wanted to tell you a couple policies because, as he said, I'm a policy wonk, but there's a couple other policies that you can look up that we have. 6810 is natural resource policy, and then 6890 is around state environmental policy. So, but continue focusing. We also have projects around solar panels that are going on. And I don't know the details off the top, so I can't share that, but, and our composting program is incredibly robust. So just wanted to share that with you, and glad you have that focus. And if you don't end up at Claremont, Western Washington, I know, has a incredibly, yep. So, been getting lots of emails around the enrollment projections in the budget, and I just want to let folks know that I'm concerned, and it'll be part of our conversation in ops tomorrow around our policy H13 and enrollment projections and things like that, to try to get some better understanding around the numbers. I think that's all I have today.
Thank you. Next up, Director Patu. Thank you.
Just wanted, lately I've been really working on, every year I say to myself, I want to do more schools every year. It's kind of hard when you're trying to sit down and really schedule the right time, and how many schools can you actually visit per day. And doing my calculation, I figure that 2 schools per day would probably be the best thing to do, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. And hopefully that schedule will continue on until the end of the school year. I know that that's a goal, but we always get sidetracked in terms of the goal that we started. But I'm hoping that I can actually visit more school than I do on a year-to-year basis. So looking forward to visiting schools that actually I have not had the chance to visit. I know sometimes when you ask people, "Have the board director visit your school lately?" And I know I've heard people say, "No, we don't even know how she looks like." So hopefully that's not the case in terms of the schools that I actually have. So I'm hoping that this year will be a better year for me to be able to visit 2 schools per day, hopefully. Since I have the most schools in all our district, I'm hoping that I can continue my list on a year-to-year basis, and hopefully I can actually say I finally finished all my schools. So working on that and get my schedule together is one of my priorities for this year, so that I might be able to visit schools that I have not been able to visit on a regular basis. This year has been as I look upon age-wise, I don't know whether I'm slowing down or maybe because as you get older, your age kind of slow you down sometimes. Because usually I've always felt myself as being a very ongoing, on-track kind of a person. But as days go by, I kept looking at my clock and looking at my days, and I kept thinking to myself, gee, I really need to watch it, because as age climb up on you, your mindset kinds of change and your pace kind of slow. In other words, it's okay to be old, but you need to do a lot of activities in order for you to keep going on, so that way your mind is not saying that you're too old to move forward. For those of you who are actually at about around my age, it's okay. We're still going strong, and that a lot of exercise really helps, because I do that every morning. I make sure that I go and do my exercise to get my mind all well and open. So it's like they said, it's okay to be able to forget sometimes, but when you get to be my age, you want to continue on to do everything you can to keep yourself healthy, and also make sure that your mind is clear and ready to go. And so that's been a kind of exciting thing. Every day I kind of look at what's going on for this week, what's going on for this month, and really keeping track of everything that needs to be done. My hope is to try to visit as many of my Southeast schools this year as possible, and be able to actually come back here and say, yeah, I actually visit more schools than what I planned to. So if I have not visited any of some of the Southeast schools, please don't be surprised, because I'm actually got my schedule going, and hopefully that I'll be able to visit each one of my schools before the year is over. So I am looking forward to that, and really excited to hopefully to see all the wonderful things that every school is doing, and be able to be a part of whatever is happening out there in the Southeast. So thank you.
Part of this fabulous board.
So thank you to all the staff who are doing a great job of actually educating our kids. Continue on the good work, and I always say, job well done.
Thank you. Director Geary.
Okay, been quite busy, had a great meeting this Tuesday, so my meetings are generally, I try to hold a meeting every Tuesday morning at Zoka on Blakely in Northeast Seattle. It's posted on my Facebook account, and then I would post if I wasn't going to make it for whatever reason. This week we had quite a large group of kids from Roosevelt High School coming to talk about the importance of computer science in our schools, and of course, I have to agree. we are feeling the pressure, of course, of the cuts and our budget restrictions. And this is the time of year where we get a lot of feedback because the schools are making very hard decisions. And so they came to advocate for their school, and I appreciate that. And so we had a discussion about all the different things that we are trying to manage in terms of our budget. But it was great to see them come out, and it would be nice to be able to reward them for their efforts, but that isn't always possible. Also, speaking of which, had the opportunity to sit in with the librarians who were meeting to talk about the different aspects of their job that they're feeling pinched, both in the fact that materials are not equitably or equally distributed. And you'll see that tonight on our action plans, because we'll be voting in new libraries for several of our schools, which are funded through capital when we open a new school. But we don't have the luxury of using our capital funding to supplement or to update libraries over time, and that creates inequities because libraries have become over date since the time that schools were opened originally. And many of the materials in them, of course, have also not changed with the times and around reflecting the diversity of the populations. And though I know our librarians work very, very hard to supplement their materials, it's not an expense we can expect them to take on or some of our schools to take on individually. So the librarians care about that deeply, and so it was an honor to sit with them and hear them talk about it. And one of the things that in that meeting, it dawned on me as I was thinking about our strategic plan, and part of our strategic plan is creating warm, welcoming environments. And the reality is that in our elementary schools, the library is the place where parents have to feel welcome. They have to have a relationship with that librarian, because many of the meetings that parents organize and hold in schools after hours or during the day that are parent-focused are in the libraries. And we have heard over time that there are people who don't find going into our schools necessarily always to be a warm welcoming, because they can go into what feels like a power structure within the parents within a school. And it's hard to feel like you can break into that if you're a new parent to a school. And so the importance of knowing a librarian and having that space be a space that you're comfortable in, and a member of the staff that you will interact with year after year, as opposed to your own teachers changing, your child's teachers changing year after year. It dawned on me that it's really important that we look at our libraries as that warm, welcoming place for parent engagement in our schools. And so to the extent that we want to create those environments, we have to keep that in mind, and we have to support our librarians in that work. I throw it out, I know that we have budget constraints, but I want us to be at least honest about what we're asking in terms of our strategic plan and how we actually hope to make that go forward. As Director Burke mentioned, we met with the members of the hospitality industry and Fair Start, and also had sort of a moment of enlightenment in that context, and we talked about it a little bit, but I want to raise it here for our public, and that I don't know if we have seamlessly integrated the transition plans that are required in special education and the offerings that we give through CTE. And that if the people who are running those team meetings are as well versed as they should be in our career-connected learning offerings, and whether we are making sure that as we develop career-connected learning offerings, that they have place for our students with special needs. And so those are two things that should be aligning and working seamlessly together. So it is a place where I suspect there may be some siloing going on, not at anybody's fault, because I know everybody's working hard in each of their individual realms, but that we need to make sure that we're developing those two areas out, and that families, when they're having their transition meetings for their students as they progress through our system, that they inquire about what the opportunities are through our career-connected learning, because it's important that we get our students there. And having read the newspaper today, that we know that our legislature is both focused on career-connected learning and also wants to increase special education funding, but with some tie to improved outcomes. It's very impressive, the outcomes, when students do participate in our career-connected learning in our academies, their outcomes, and if we can get more of our students with special needs into those pathways, I think we'll see the kind of success that our legislators want in terms of accountability for the money they give us. I'm going to go back to the unified, and my hope that within our budget, and perhaps it's through mitigation, but I do recall saying at some point in the past that if we are not including funding for unified athletics, just as we would for Title IX around female athletics, I'm not sure I can support a budget that doesn't support our kids with special needs and their opportunities to participate. So I made that statement before, and I need to follow up in terms of our budget, finding that space within our budget, because as I said, that's very important to me. Had the opportunity to attend the SPS Athletic Hall of Fame. I didn't see a slide for that. Forgot that. And that was lovely. It's an annual event that's been going on, I think, now for 3 or 4 years, where we get people from Seattle who have made their mark in athletics. And this year it was Mr. Inslee. I don't know Mr. Inslee's first name, but he was one of our, Frank? Jay Inslee's father was one of our athletic directors, and so he was honored at the Hall of Fame along with many others, and so you can go online and take a look at that. But it's a lovely event that brings together people. It's just a historic event. It's at the Washington Athletic Club, and just generations of people coming together that have participated in athletics. And it's really a nice event. We continue to hear from people who are very much interested in our science adoption. And I know, being the head of the Curriculum Instruction Committee, we are very concerned about that, and that we will do everything we can. It is a process. Adoptions are a process. They are governed by our policy. We will do the best to make sure that that policy is implemented faithfully, and that each of the curriculums that we are looking at are being given a fair assessment with regard to one another, and then listen to our staff in terms of their feedback. And then did also hear from music staff, and of course, because of cuts, we're seeing that in music as well. And one of the suggestions that was made that I think would be worth exploring a little bit more fully is, to the extent that our our higher schools, our middle schools, and our high schools have to cut back on their music staff, should those staff want to develop pipelines by creating opportunities in our elementary schools, I think that that is something that we should look at. So if they can take and go into our elementary schools and do some instruction around the kinds of instruments that they specialize in. So if you have a wind instructor at middle school who has the ability within the FTE count to go and provide that kind of instruction, so that you don't have percussionists instructing students with wind instruments or students with string instruments. So I think with budget cuts, if we're going to make equitable offerings throughout our school district, throughout our schools, throughout the pathways, we need to be more creative about how our adults are delivering instruction, and there perhaps may need to be more flexibility in where they're delivering that instruction so that we can serve all of our kids. So those are my comments. Thank you.
That happy note, I'm taking chair's privilege. We are having a break, and we will start 5:30 on the dot for testimony, and my comments will come after public testimony. Thank you. Back in session. If you could read the next 3 people in batches of 3 to testify, please do so. And I get to read the rules. Please don't break them. I don't like ruling people out of order. Hate it. One person speaks at a time. Comments should be addressed to the board. Please adhere to the time limit. When you have 30 seconds left, you get the yellow light. When you get the red light, please finish up your sentence. You can always write to the board, spsdirectors@seattleschools.org. You can write to the board and senior staff at schoolboard@seattleschools.org. We read every email. It is impossible for us to get back to you on every email. The focus of the comments should be on the issues and solutions. The majority of your time must be spent on the topic that you have indicated you wish to speak of. No racial slurs, personal insults, ridicule, or threats will be allowed. No comments regarding personnel matters. And all signs, and I don't see any tonight, must adhere to these ground rules. Take it away. Thank you.
First up, we have Maxine Embry, followed by Leah Morgan, and then Gia Corvino.
Hi, I'm Maxine Embry. I'm Vice President of the class of 2021 and one of the producers of the school bulletin announcements called GTV, and also a cheerleader for Garfield High School. Thank you for having me here today. I love Garfield with a passion, and I'm here to talk to you about the things that can benefit our school if given the chance. So the first thing I would like to bring up is Garfield's lack of access to technology. We have a Garfield app which helps us get school information, and there's also a tip that you can report anonymously if you're being bullied or any other issues that you want to report. You can also keep track of assignments, and there's also a link to GTV. GTV is something that I helped create. It's for school announcements and has given an outlet for students who are interested in pursuing a career in video production and television. Especially in this day and age where the school revolves, or the world revolves around technology more and more, and this is something we need at our school. In this new era of technology, we've moved from turning work in on paper and turning in our work to teachers online. These types of resources are not readily available to every student at Garfield. How can students who don't have access to a laptop or computer at home get the same grades as students who do? Everyone benefits from having access to new technologies, where you're a student or an athlete. Yeah. My time's running out. I'm scared. Well, okay, due to the current bell times, having access to be able to turn in homework online would be helpful to students who are athletes. They can be productive on the court and productive at home. Garfield has a great athletic program and great academics, and our schedules are very jam-packed. We get out of school at 3:45, practice at 4, which ends at 6, or maybe a game that starts at 5 and ends at 7. And by the time we get home, it's almost 8, and we still have homework to do. Us Garfield students have to stay up late to do homework, and having access to a laptop might alleviate the stress from having such a long day. And you might be thinking, oh, that's all students. All students have to stay up. But no, because of this later start, we're tricked into thinking it's okay for me to stay up because I can just make up my sleep. We're tired and we're drained, and sometimes we don't even have the motivation to learn at school. I believe in changing the bell times back to what it was before. Could give us more time and motivation to focus on our academics. In conclusion, Technology is the future, and investing in our future will be the difference between the success of our education. Also, please consider the bell times with the potential of ending daylight savings, which will also benefit to the success of our students. Thank you again for your time, and if you haven't, subscribe to GTV on YouTube to stay updated.
Thank you.
At my school, the library is one of the most popular places to read, do homework, or just hang out and talk with friends. There are hundreds of students who flock the library every day, and I am one of them. I come to the library because I feel safe within the community that gathers there. Middle schools often have the reputation of being some of the most terrifying years of your life. And to a certain extent, that's true. It can be stressful and frustrating to look out at the cafeteria and choose a place to sit. Navigating the social dynamics and rules can be nerve-wracking. That's why I am so grateful for the library. Instead of staying in a loud, crowded lunchroom, I can come to a safe haven where I feel comfortable to learn and grow into a better person. If I can only come to my library 3 times a week, I don't know what I'd do those other days. That is why I've come here today, because anyone going through some of the roughest parts of their life deserve a safe place like libraries. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
After Gia Corvino, we will have Amina Adams, followed by Stacia Bell, and then Chris Jackins.
Hello, my name is Gaia Corvino, and I'm also a 7th grader at Madison Middle School. When I heard that the school board was deciding to make the library open only 2.5 days a week, I was saddened and disappointed. Although some might think that the youth of today would much rather be on their phones than reading actual books, I would argue that the library is more than just a place to read. Personally, the library is the first place I go when I get to school. I go to the library at lunch when I need somewhere quiet to be. Sometimes, if my teachers let me, I even come into the library during class if we're working on a big project. But I'm not the only one who cherishes the library. Kids from all different backgrounds and lifestyles, athletes, coders, thespians, and more, gather in the library to do homework, meet with friends, and of course, read. The library also has a whole bunch of art activities and even has computers for us to research on. I know I speak for my fellow students when I say that all of us would be devastated if the library was closed on the days we need it most. Please keep our libraries open. In such a quickly paced world, we need as many places as we can to slow down and think. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amina? Stacia? Go ahead.
My name is Stacia Bell, and I am a librarian at Madison Middle School in West Seattle. Over the past month, we have heard a lot about the incredible impact closing library doors will have on some of our most vulnerable youth, especially those that do not have access to books and technology outside of school. Today, though, I want to talk about another population of students whose needs also must be considered when we talk about closing library doors. And this is those students that rely on the library as a safe haven. As you heard some of my students already mention, for many students, the school library is that safe space. For some, it is the only safe space during the school day where they feel at ease or where they can grow and develop. In fact, each day, just at lunch, I have around 150 students across my 3 lunches that choose to spend their lunch period in the library because it has become their smaller, safer community within a very large school. Your decision to make librarians part-time will close the doors of these safe havens 2.5 days a week and deny thousands of Seattle public school students the opportunity to learn and grow in these nurturing spaces. I recently received an email from a past parent whose 2 twin daughters are now thriving at Brown University. They were both amazing creative students at Madison, HCC identified, but they really struggled at my school socially and sadly dealt with a lot of bullying. But as their mother describes it, the library was what saved them. She wrote to me, "I just want you to know how important the library was to both of my girls. Having you on their side and providing them a place to seek quiet refuge during the school day helped them survive their 2 years at Madison. I honestly do not know how my 2 would have survived, let alone thrived, without a couple of caring adults like you who accepted them for exactly who they were and let them be exactly who they needed to be. 4th through 8th grades were really quite traumatic for them socially, with bullying and exclusion and humiliations that were never addressed properly by schools. Without safe harbors like libraries provided, I think they could have easily gone down a very different path. Creating this safe refuge for kids is one of the many reasons I go to school each day and why I believe that school libraries need to be open each and every day for each and every student. Thank you."
After Chris Jackins, we will have Tuesday Chambers, followed by Tina Buster, and then Jeffrey Treisman.
My name, is it on now? Thank you. My name is Chris Jackins, box 84063, Seattle 98124. On the network upgrade, what are the numbers that indicate an exponential increase in usage? On the purchase of library collections, what portion of the collections are accessible to blind and sight-impaired individuals? On the real estate item scheduled for a secret executive session later tonight, which seems to have been postponed. 4 points. Number 1, a previous real estate deal involved buying a school bus lot and a warehouse site in Renton. Number 2, I objected that the district had not included the cost of constructing warehouses. Number 3, the last superintendent replied that it was such a great deal that it did not matter. Number 4, please publicly discuss any financial losses from that deal before heading into your next secret meeting. On school board elections, 4 board positions are up for election in 2019 in districts 1, 2, 3, and 6. The candidate sign-up period is May 13th to May 17th. On the personnel report, 3 points. Number 1, the report notes the retirement of David Westberg, a custodial engineer and the decades-long business manager of the Operating Engineers Union Local 609. Number 2, the board in its own way has recognized David Westberg many times when the district has been required to publicly read statements acknowledging that the district committed an unfair labor practice. Number 3, I wish to thank David Westberg for his service, for his representation of an important group of district employees, and for his efforts to improve Seattle Public Schools. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Tuesday Chambers. I'm the Ballard High School librarian. And I right now am ceding my time to Colleen Carlson.
Does that stay there? Oh. Hi, I'm Colleen Carlson, librarian at West Seattle High School. I am reading this letter on behalf of Theodore Greenleaf, a junior at West Seattle High School, and he could not be here tonight. He says, "When I first arrived at West Seattle, I was a skittish kid. I didn't live near there, and I didn't know anyone. My freshman year, we cycled through 3 librarians in a 3-month period. Every time I would begin to get close to them, they would leave. That is until Miss Carlson arrived. She brought a breath of fresh air. You could tell that she was dedicated, unlike the librarians who knew they were temporary. She helped to bring me out of my shell. She talked to me and encouraged my reading. If you look around in our library in the mornings and at lunch and after school, You'll see so many students in the library. Every single morning, she's there before most of our teachers, ready for those of us who are panicking about the upcoming test or the latest essay or a project due before lunch. Every lunch, she's there for those of us who need to study more or those who need a quiet place with their friends or alone. Every day after school, she's there. If you cut our librarians to part-time, when will we study? Where? You will displace the children who spend their morning time working hard or trying to brace themselves for the day. You will displace the children who need that time at lunch to do homework so they can actually sleep at night after work or extracurriculars. You will displace the children who need access to computers because their homes have none, and those who are trying their hardest to maintain their grades for sports. And you will displace those of us who love the library. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tina Buster, and I'm ceding my time to Kanae Yod.
Hi, I'm Kanae Yod, and I'm also a 7th grader from Madison Middle School. Many of you may know this already, but the libraries in the Seattle Public School District are about to be closed for 2.5 days of the week, meaning that students would only get access to them for about half of the school days we have. Libraries are an important part of learning for me and many of the other students at my school, and I can say on behalf of those who aren't here that none of us want it to close. People disregard the importance of libraries, thinking that they can just be thrown away. But the library isn't just a place to find books. It's a place where students can access the computer to do homework or just have fun with their friends. It's a place where we can do cool arts and crafts projects, like making buttons or bullet journals. It's kind of ironic, because the reason I'm here speaking to you today is because of the library. And me and my friends set up a group where we can talk about topics we don't usually get to talk about otherwise, like racial equity, LGBTQ+, and most recently, school/education. We were told about the news, and we thought it would be a great idea to speak. Having our library open all of the weekdays encourages us to speak our mind, be creative, and to learn. Another reason the library matters is because it's a place where people who might not like to read can find a book that they really love. In middle school, people start losing interest in books and drifting towards Instagram or Snapchat, forgetting about the power that a good book holds. We need those days to make sure every student in our school can be shown the importance of books. Thank you for the time you've given to me today, and I hope you understand the remarkable influence of libraries.
After Jeffrey Treisman, we'll have Manuela Sly, followed by Melissa Westbrook, and then Sabrina Burr.
Hi, my name's Jeff Treisman. I'm the librarian at Denny International Middle School. I'm back to talk to you. I tweet. This morning I wrote this. When 34 state studies confirm the positive impact of library programs, why would a district cut the most effective, efficient, and flexible personnel with the proven ability to impact student achievement? It is not logical. We have many studies. I have an article here. I will forward it to you. It's from Lance and Cockle. It's called Why School Librarians Matter. What years of research tell us? But to illustrate this, I'm going to read from a statement I got from a special ed teacher. And the first part is personal, about herself. As an immigrant entering the U.S. in elementary school, librarians and their space were my refuge when I was struggling. I built close relationships with each librarian at every level. They fueled a love of reading that I have to this day and is directly linked to my success as an adult. Every student needs this opportunity. Then she goes on to talk about her students. My students are 3 to 5 years behind in all academic areas. Socially, they're at the same level as their grade level peers. My students have historically been reluctant readers because reading is a struggle. When you have to labor to sound out all words, reading becomes a chore and not something they would choose to do on their own. In addition, they don't want their peers to see them reading what they call baby books. When I discussed this problem with my school librarian, he recommended books that were grade level interest, but easy readability, such as graphic novels. He paired my students with books specifically for them and their interests. He also help me secure grants so that I could purchase these same books for my classroom library. So you see, librarians are problem solvers, and regardless of the building, we're going to solve problems. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Manuela Sly. I am a member of the Strategic Plan Steering Committee. I went through the process of submitting my application, presenting my letters of recommendation from my community, and I was finally and ultimately selected as a Latino community representative. Most importantly, I am a parent of 4 children from elementary to high school, from special education to advanced placement. So I walk the walk. And I can tell you during the process of the strategic plan, passion and conviction was evident every step of the way as we community members and Seattle public school staff came together to draft a plan that will ensure that communities of color are included, validated, and given the chance of better education. And now I cede my time to Imajah Smith.
My name is Imajah Smith. I, too, was a member of the Strategic Planning Steering Committee, and I am a parent of children here in Seattle Public Schools, a parent of 3 children. My daughter, who's an aspiring judge, one day she will be one, also graduated here from Seattle Public Schools and the UW as well. And I'm here to share my support for the strategic plan and just want to share with you the process a little bit. I want to say, as an education advocate, primarily out here in the community for the African American community and what's in our best interest, I have never experienced a process as harmonious, as aligned, as founded in the value of racial equity with Seattle Public Schools. I personally was amazed. So I'm supporting this because it's real. It's saying a lot about the district and our growth. It's saying a lot even about the board when you guys have reviewed this plan. And we do have a long ways to go, but this is a wonderful start. And I want to also say the representation that was on the steering committee was across the district. And when I say harmonious, we were not in there fighting back and forth about who's this, who's that. I mean, people were just in line, and there was a lot of great intelligence and expertise on that board. Thank you. Or on that advisory.
Good evening. I'm sorry, I just lost my place. I have some thoughts on the strategic plan. It's less of a plan than a group of ideas, and the previous strategic plan was 30 pages versus the 6 short pages here. I agree with the theory of serving those who have been historically underserved and needing more resources. However, Oakland School District lists many funders for its targeted universalism program. Where are yours? Gone is the wording about helping every child, regardless of race, gender, socioeconomic status, ELL, or disability. The plan purports that if you eliminate opportunity gaps, every student will get a good education. That statement supposes that every school is good and that the district is operating well, and neither of those statements are true, so that previous statement is false. Our schools are limping along despite what happens in this building or in Olympia. Our librarians, our teachers, our nurses, our principals, our IAs strive every day with the sword of Damocles over their heads. Where to start? Running down schools that used to be great, like Washington, Lowell, Stevens, cutting librarians. And who is it that gave teachers raises without identifying a source for that? This district. You can't blame the legislature for that. And at the work session on the budget, we were told Bex Fies, we're going to expand buildings, we're building buildings, and then we're told the enrollment is going down. There's no one from enrollment there. The idea of charter competition was ignored. Parents tell me that when they leave the district, they are not asked why or where they're going. I introduced myself to Mr. Podesta the other day, and I told him I was equal parts cheerleader and critic for this district. I changed that today. From now on, I'm your critical friend. I cannot support this district as it is currently being run. Board, this should not be the case, and the only people who can change that are the 7 of you who sit up there. Be the change that you want to see.
After Sabrina Burr, we will have Kent Koth, followed by Robert Cruikshank, and then Chandra Hampson.
My name is Sabrina Burr, and I'm going to cede my time to my daughter, Rena Matasia Walker Burr.
Thank you, Superintendent, for meeting with NYC regarding the strategic plan and other topics students needed to discuss. And thank you, Leslie Harris, for agreeing to meet with NYC to have a human two-way conversation with NYC to discuss the disrespect and implicit bias in the NYC family we experienced during some school board meetings. We look forward to a deeper understanding and positive solutions. Much appreciation for the committee's work, as well as the school board and the superintendents on the strategic plan. We wish the language was more strongly stated, but this is a good start. There should not be changes to weaken the language of this policy. Our actions must be unapologetic. Our demands for getting it right for all students, especially those further from justice, must be unapologetic. We have come here time and time again. We have told our stories. We have witnessed our emotions, even a few tears. Every day, students go home in tears that become tears of families. This plan helps us to turn tears into hope, voices into voiceless. It gives a more solid foundation to build on. It is time to change the narrative and it is time not to see black and brown children as broken. Just because our brilliance may look and show different does not mean our brilliance does not live inside of us. Build a district that sees me and students who look like me as a whole being of possibilities. Do not single stories us. Embrace who we are. Help us to our highest God-giving purpose. Create a teaching force that teaches not only our brain but also our hearts. See me fully. See other students that look like me fully. If you recognize our ancestral trauma, then also recognize our ancestral brilliance, resilience, and strength. Adopt the plan. Let us unlearn the lies and build the truth of the families and students we serve. This strategic plan is a good start. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Kent Koth. I am the Executive Director of the Seattle University Center for Community Engagement. For the past 8 years, through what we call the Seattle University Youth Initiative, Seattle University has focused its community engagement efforts in support of children, youth, and families living in the greater Yesler Terrace neighborhoods immediately south of our campus. This includes a pathway of schools, including 4 preschools, Gatzford Elementary School, Washington Middle School, and Garfield High School, as well as Middle College High School at Seattle University. Through our efforts, we connect and convene with dozens of organizations offering after-school and summer learning opportunities, family engagement programs, affordable housing, and access to high-quality health care. These partnerships benefit the university as they provide service and learning opportunities for hundreds of university students and faculty opportunities to apply research and teaching to make an impact. We're excited about Seattle Public Schools' proposed strategic plan as its emphasis on students of color who are, and its emphasis on students of color who are farthest from educational justice. The proposed plans focus on racial equity, family engagement, and the whole child, and culturally responsive professional practices parallel our commitments and our beliefs. In fact, our recent strategic plan for community engagement includes a very similar emphasis. Focusing on students of color who are farthest from educational justice will benefit our entire school system and city and help us live out our nation's values of equity and justice. Seattle University looks forward to deepening and expanding our partnerships with Seattle Public Schools and implementing this important strategic plan. I urge you to support the strategic plan. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Robert Cruikshank, and I'm going to cede my time to Summer Stinson.
I'm Summer Stinson, a mom of a middle schooler in SPS. Thank you for your work on the strategic plan. I do hope that you further define the important requirement of high-quality instruction. My middle schooler is currently taking Amplify Science with a strong teacher, but Amplify is a fully online science curriculum that has killed his love of learning of science. There is no hands-on learning, which is crucial in science. Also, to be able to implement the strategic plan, Seattle Public Schools needs to equitably invest in students. That does take money. I am working to organize and advocate to the legislature to increase all school districts' levy authority and get new progressive revenue like capital gains tax to fully fund public schools. I am gravely concerned about the cuts to secondary schools, to librarians, assistant principals, and class sizes. I was really touched hearing all these students talk about seeking refuge in the library, and I will out myself as somebody who was bullied in middle school and high school and went to the library very often at lunchtime when I didn't have people to sit with. And I think I turned out okay. So I say that libraries are crucial and important. And for my middle schooler who's already been through a few situations, we've had to have some problem solving with his middle school, which has worked out really well because I was able to contact either a librarian or an assistant principal, and those people matter so much in these schools. They really step up, and they are just incredibly crucial to these middle schoolers. And so I know that we need more money. I ask you to join us in advocating for more money and raising your voices as loud as you can. I ask parents to do the same. And I ask you to ask parents to do as much as they can, because we need to be able to equitably invest in all of our students. Thank you.
After Chandra Hampson, we will have Darren Hoop, followed by Lowell Bander, and then Blaine Parse.
Hi, everybody. I'm Chandra Hampson. I'll just take this off. The Vice President of the Native American Parent Advisory Committee, otherwise known as HACHUSETA. I have 2 girls, 3rd and 5th graders at Sandpoint Elementary. I was selected to be a member of the Strategic Planning Committee, which was a great honor for me as a representative of the Native community. And I have to echo Amaja's comments in that it was a surprising, I've been through a lot of strategic planning sessions in different types of organizations and different scales, and I was pleasantly surprised at how deeply committed every single member of that committee was to doing this work and doing it well. And so for everyone that was on that committee, it was a surprisingly great experience, and I hope that the community can come to understand that there is great value in that work, and that what is really important about it is that the plan is a focused attempt to help the district learn how to actually work for our students that are furthest from educational justice. For me personally, as a representative of the Native community, I wanted a plan that would recognize the need to disrupt the colonial mindset of our educational practices, to focus more so on intellectual health rather than academic achievement. I think that this is a great step in that direction, and I encourage you to support it. And I hope that folks that do have deeper questions about this plan will seek us out as committee members and talk to us and ask us questions about what that process was like and how we can build on it. And I thank you, everyone who contributed to that. I know we'll talk about it more later, but I do appreciate all the good hard work and the acceptance of all the pushback that the community members gave, because there was a lot of good, solid pushback. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Darren Hoop. I'm a sub at Rainier Beach. I cede my time to Masih Fuladi. He is the Executive Director of the Washington State Chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations.
My name is Masih Fuladi. I'm the Executive Director of CARE Washington. Through our policy, legal advocacy, media relations work, our organization works to protect the civil rights of Muslims throughout the state. A central part of our efforts is to proactively advocate for legislation and policies that support religious accommodations in schools and to protect Muslim students from harassment, intimidation, and bullying in schools through our legal representation. Members in our community brought to my attention a letter that was sent to parents at Thurgood Marshall Elementary informing them that standardized testing would take place during the month of Ramadan. For younger students, students that will be most impacted by fasting, there is flexibility in the administration of this test, which can be given anytime between April 16th and June 7th. That means that accommodations could have been taken to at least for students between 5th and 8th grade to take the WCAS before the beginning of Ramadan. It appears that this option was not taken into consideration by Seattle Public Schools. Given the our recent work with Seattle Public Schools to honor religious holidays of all minorities, efforts that originated from the school district's disregard for the Jewish holiday of Rosh Hashanah earlier this year, I'm incredibly disheartened to learn that better accommodations and communication weren't made for students during the holiday of Ramadan. When the issues like this arise, we try to take a proactive approach and therefore felt it necessary to partner with other faith groups in showing our dismay. In light of our efforts earlier this year, the letter sent to the Thurgood Marshall Elementary is all the more concerning. It seems that our concerns and the concerns of other minority faith groups were not heard. Not only does the content of the letter border on infringement of students' First Amendment rights, the school district must also understand the impact of these decisions when they're coming from people in places of authority. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lowell Bander. I cede my time to Virginia Bethia.
Hi, I'm speaking on behalf of the Rainier Beach High School PTSA community, as I'm a parent of 3 children and grandparent of 6 who've attended Rainier Beach High School. I would like to thank Leslie Harris for speaking up for an earlier completion date on the RBH renovation. We really, really appreciate that. Thank you. I also like to thank the board members for being behind this project and making sure that equity was raised by making Rainier Beach High School one of the renovated schools for the BEX5. Thank you for standing behind a school that has been distressed and oppressed by prior hidden agendas, and we just want to say thank you. I am thrilled to hear that the strategic plan includes specific language providing equitable services and academic intervention support targeting African American males. With that being said, Rainier Beach High School houses a large percentage of African American males, and a great initiative to align with the CSEP goal is to renovate the school sooner than later. Sooner than later, the 2025 completion date is unacceptable. We need a healthy learning environment now. Richard Best and his team met with our community members on several occasions to talk about ideas of various phases of the project so we are able to execute an occupied renovation. Please stop making excuses to delay this project, as your first projected completion year was 2022. You are able to choose from diverse groups of contractors and community partners to attain this goal. It took you no time to renovate Lincoln to address your overcapacity issues in the North End. It wasn't even on the original renovation list for BEX4. We were given BTA 4 funds for an earthquake upgrade. Go figure. So once again, we need your support to push this initiative through prior to the 2025 completion date, and we thank you for your support. God bless.
After Blaine Parse, we will have Lee Micklin, followed by Alex Zimmerman. Blaine?
Good evening, school board members. My name is Blaine Parse. I'm an enrolled member of the Fort Pitt Tribes in Montana. I am currently a parent and guardian caregiver of 4 students in Seattle Public Schools, 3 at Ingram, 1 at Licton Springs, and soon to be 1 at Roosevelt. I am here about the draft strategic plan for Seattle Public Schools. There was just a number of things that I seen wrong with the plan, that there was no real open communication about the selection process made to some of the marginalized families like myself. I'm a low income, I'm a voter, I'm a taxpayer. You know, school board levies pass, and those are coming out of, you know, our dollars. And so just to see the plan that doesn't fit for some of our children who are free and reduced lunch, special ed, also IEP kids, there's no outline for this on the strategic plan for our special education students. Also, our Native students are left out here, there was, hold on, I'm a little bit of a mess. There's an inequity that we face here in Seattle Public Schools, and we just, I'm here tonight to hopefully you guys hear me as, a parent, guardian, taxpayer, voter, City of Seattle resident, that some of these changes need to be made. Thank you.
Lee Macklin. Sorry, Lee is next.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and then you're after.
Hello, I'm Lee Micklin, Cleveland STEM High School librarian, and I'm advocating that libraries be placed at the top of the restoration plan. Washington state codes and the collective bargaining agreement make it very clear. When librarians are not there, libraries are closed. With the cuts recently approved, 8 out of 102 schools will have access to full-time librarians. That means 89% of our schools will have libraries that are closed half the week. True, piecemeal, individual schools may cobble together enough funds to save their libraries. We are already hearing reports that some schools in the wealthier neighborhoods are using funds from PTSA or alumni foundations to keep their libraries open. But this means we will not be serving the vast majority of students half the week, including those who are at-risk learners, low-income children, and students of color. So these cuts are hurting precisely the students the Seattle Public Schools mission statement aims to serve. Quoting, "Seattle Public Schools is committed to ensuring equitable access and closing the opportunity gap." A large body of evidence correlates high-quality library programs with student achievement. Higher reading scores, higher graduation rates, greater mastery of academic standards. How is closing libraries half the week ensuring equitable access? Finally, is there not a cruel incongruity between our city's boom economy and closing libraries for public school children? In October 2017, UNESCO, a branch of the United Nations, designated Seattle a city of literature. We are one of only 20 designated cities of literature in the world, and we are recognized. Press for this designation stated the world is looking at Seattle as a cultural leader. I'm asking the school board to place Seattle Public Libraries at the top of the restoration plan or use rainy day funds to restore funding to the library. Let's show the community and the world we're truly worthy of the designation, UNESCO City of Literature. Thank you.
Hi, my name Alex Zimmerman. I'm president of Stand Up America, and I think I have 6 elections before. Guys, I have very good news for you, very unique news. I think this happened first time in American history. All America right now, from East Coast to West Coast, from the Atlantic to the stranger, all 300 million people recognize right now, so Seattle is country #1 fascist city in America. Guys, what has happened now is very interesting. You are a fascist. And I go and speak about this every day, more than 2,200 times, in every place what as I can. Situation what as we have right now so critical and so unique because you all belong to one-party system. And one-party system is always fascism, is exactly what as I want to explain to you. But you're not only fascist, like fascist, playing games. You are real fascist with Nazi Gestapo principle. That's exactly who you are. And I give you classic example, additional example, one more. 3 council, Seattle Council in court recognized that it's broken a constitutional law, Open Public Meeting Act, and Consul Gonzalez 5 times. Few years ago, it's in all newspaper. I come to Seattle Council chamber every day, speak 2-3 times sometimes per day. No one consul, no one man, no one woman, no one Seattle citizen come and talk to Consul Gonzalez. You violate constitutional law 5 times. You need go out. Nobody talking about this. What does this mean? You mean you're acting like a Nazi? Social democratic mafias is exactly who you are. Because when somebody violates constitutional law 5 times, he's supposed to be moved out from council chamber by tomorrow. It's never happened. Thank you, my Führer.
And lastly, for public testimony, we have Jessica Logan.
Hello, thank you. I was on the waiting list, so I didn't know I was going to get called. So here I am. Hello. My name is Jessica Logan. I'm a parent of a Dearborn Park third grader who is sitting back there, and she's so glad I'm here because she's really bored. I'm here because I really want to feel like the board is on the same team with our schools, with parents, with us. And often I haven't felt like that. I haven't felt like there's transparency in the decision making, in what parents and schools want and what the board does. And so part of what's concerning me and why I'm here today is there are some district policies and zoning that is specifically affecting Dearborn Park's enrollment. And we want to be a part of that discussion because there's been some enrollment issues that have come up that we have not been allowed to be a part of, parents or the school, in terms of drawing the lines of what borders are our school's enrollment area. So we would also like to, there's some steps that I was asked to talk about. We'd like our waitlisted students to be considered longer and a bigger wait list. For example, I was on the wait list for 3 years for Dearborn Park. Even though there was always space, the wait list was always dissolved before I got in. So we'd also like we have an immersion program, yet families who are heritage speakers who live close by are often not allowed to come to the school. And those heritage speakers would really improve our program. So we'd like to ask for a GeoZone for heritage speakers that would be around our school, which we don't have at the moment. And I think, let's see. Yes, that's it, I guess. So thank you so much for listening. And I'm super excited about the new superintendent. I hope that we can work together. Thank you.
Thank you.
This concludes the sign-up list for public testimony this evening. Thank you.
Okay, board members, if you wish to make comments about public testimony that you've heard, now is the time. Please do keep them short. Thank you. Director Geary.
I always want to give a special thanks to all the students who come and participate. I'll just say it out again, it increases over time. And I think that is a good sign. It's a healthy system. We have our critic who comes now regularly, but I think overall it's really great that we have students coming and talking, and that means the future of our city is brighter for it because you're engaging, you're creating an example, you're going back, your communities, I hope, are celebrating the fact that you were here. You should have school announcements letting everybody know that you came and talked to us. I know that's embarrassing once you're back in your own school, but I hope that becomes a part of our system as well. I spoke about librarians before, and I think I spoke last time, so I won't go into that again. And so the only other thing I wanted to say is that a heritage GeoZone is a really interesting idea, and I like it a lot.
Other directors. Director Burke.
I also thank folks for sharing their time and their thoughts with us for public testimony. Around the librarians, we are in a really challenging position at the board level because we basically have yes or no approval on the budget. I would like to think, maybe this is arrogant, but I would like to think that we have influence beyond that. And so if that's the case, I would hope that the community of librarians can also work with SEA, with PASS, with the weighted staffing standards team to help put together what feels like a more equitable or student-focused recommendation to the board. I would love to see that. The other thing that I wanted to speak about the strategic plan, because I expect some folks want to leave, so I just want to make one brief comment about it. And this sort of builds on a conversation that we had at my community meeting. I'm hearing from my community a lot of the concern around, if we're talking about each student or every student, people don't necessarily see themselves in this plan. If we're focusing on African American males, where do I see myself in this plan? And I'll be honest that it's been a little bit of a struggle for me as a board director to say, I haven't been as involved in the development as the committee and the great work that's been done. And so I've been trying to figure out, what does that mean? What does our implementation mean? And I've boiled it down to an example, which I think is really illustrative. I've been working to try to improve math. It's been a passion area for me for years before I came on the board and years since I've been on the board. And one of the elements of math that I think we're under-delivering on is just areas of basic skills. Knowing your math facts, knowing your fluency, being able to do arithmetic. And I asked a group of people at my community meeting if they have provided support for their kids, either through tutoring or instruction at their kitchen table. And I can tell you that the vast majority of hands went up, and I can say that about mine as well. So my question to them and to everyone in the district is, how many of our African American males, our young boys, have that same opportunity or getting that same support at home? And so the idea that our strategic plan provides that intentionality, if our system provides that for African American boys, it'll provide them for my child, for your child, for everyone's child. And that time that you used to spend at the kitchen table, you can spend doing something else. You can spend doing something that's, building family, that's helping us out at the district with other areas. And so I just really wanted to put a concrete example in front of people about what this, this idea of targeted universalism, which comes off as a buzzword a lot, what that actually could mean in practice. If we can put that level of focus and say, this thing that we're providing, many of us are providing our students at home, that's our job in the district, is to provide those services to our students. So I just wanted to put that out there before we bring that item up. Thank you.
Other comments? Director Mack, please.
I think I've said it before, but I'll say it again. I think public comment is my favorite part of the board meeting because I learn new things, I hear new stories, and I'll echo the appreciation for the students that are coming and raising their voices. Public speaking is a skill that is really important to learn, and appreciate your voices and just some amazing writing in what I heard tonight, so appreciate that. I also want to respond to Jessica Logan and the questions around Dearborn Park and the process of boundary changes and so forth. I don't know if she's still in the room, but just for overarching clarification, we go through a process every year of adopting the student assignment transition plan and any boundary changes that are needed. That process starts now with kind of identifying where changes might need to be made, and we should be starting soon with the conversations around which boundaries might need to be changing, what other solutions might need to be on the table. And we already know of some of those hot spots, and some of those conversations are started, but that is something that we'll touch on tomorrow at OPS because it's part of our overarching capacity management conversation. And I was not aware that there were issues with Dearborn Park, and I wasn't aware of a boundary change imminent, so I appreciate that coming forward, and I'm interested to learn more about that. Again, all the other comments that have been brought forth, I especially, I want to echo the comments in the emails around our sensitivity around religious observances and providing accommodation and being clear that we do that and we are going to be doing that, and not asking students to change their religious practices, but instead that we can appropriately accommodate, especially when these tests have such, they can have such high stakes individually and for the school community. I appreciate the response that Superintendent Juneau made earlier and the accommodations. Thank you for the thank you from the Rainier Beach PTA for the work that we've been doing around BEX and the planning. Another point of clarification is that the implementation plan is not totally finalized. It's not something we yet vote on, but that I think is still in conversation as to how some of those things can be flexible, because as we know, planning needs to be flexible. So with that, I will say thank you for coming. And
Director DeWolf.
Yes, thanks, President Harris. I just wanted to quickly reiterate the gratitude to our students. It is seriously one of the most important aspects of the public comment to have you as our end user, our most important customer, if that's what you want to call yourselves. So thank you for coming out on your Wednesday night and speaking up on behalf of something you care deeply about. I will say, particularly as a queer person in high school, I needed the libraries too. Those were my safe space, so I really understand the deep importance of our libraries in our system. I think part of that I would just want to encourage to continue advocating to your state legislators. You, our neighbors, fellow taxpayers and voters approved a levy that goes much higher than the state is allowing us to collect. And just opening up that levy by $500 more is a huge increase in the funding that we have. So please continue to advocate for your state, advocate to your state legislators. And the only last thing I wanted to say was particularly to Kent Koth from SU. I noticed you said Bailey, Washington, Garfield, and Middle College, and I hope we can chat about maybe potentially working with Nova High School. They have 2/3 of their funding for their health clinic that they still need. We voted as folks on the city's FEP levy for 1/3 funding for their health clinic, but we still need support for that last 2/3. So I hope we can have a conversation about supporting our students there. It's a large LGBTQ population, and they're deeply critical to our school community. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Too.
I just want to say thank you. I just want to say thank you for everyone who actually, is it on? No, I got it. I just want to say thank you for everyone who actually came here tonight and spoke your truth. I think that it's actually a great process for everyone to come and let us know what your needs are or what your complaint is, because working together, it's what's going to make a difference in our schools for our kids. We all make mistakes, but I think that when we keep each other accountable, we tend to make less mistakes and be able to look forward in really making sure that we provide the best education that we can for all Seattle Public Schools students. It's really amazing to actually hear from everyone and be able to come in and just tell us your truth, because if you don't come and tell us, we would never know what's going on, because we work together as a team in order for us to provide opportunities for every one of our children. So I'm really always very pleased to be here tonight and be able to hear what communities and parents have to say, because you keep us accountable. And that's how we do a better job. It's when we know that we're doing something that we shouldn't be doing, but at the same time, we're here because we care about each and every students in Seattle Public Schools. And we want to make sure that our kids in Seattle Public Schools get the best education that we can provide. So thank you for your truth, and please continue us to keep us accountable, because sometimes we miss a step or two, but it takes all of us to make a difference so we can be able to help our students to be the best that they can be. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, last, hopefully not least. This Saturday, March 16th, High Point Library, 3 to 5. You have a 1 in 3 chance of getting lasagna. You also have a 100% chance of visiting with Chief Podesta, our new Chief of Operating Officer. Is that correct? COO. And those of y'all that don't know, Chief Podesta comes from a very impressive career, last at the City of Seattle. Ramadan, SBAC testing. At my kitchen table, where fairly snarky people live, it was suggested that what we really need to do is have the SBAC testing on Christmas. Because after all, the Muslim religion is the most popular religion in the world. And that took me up short. That took me up very short. And that analogy, though snarky, is pretty darn profound. So, more respect. We've made apologies. We're trying to do better. Last Saturday was a busy day. It was with the Alliance for Black Educators at Meany Middle School. Superintendent Junot was there. She gave the keynote. Chief Jones, wave please, was there, served on a panel. Our principal, Mia Williams, was there, served on a panel. We had the assistant OSPI superintendent talking about ESSA. Whole lot of PowerPoint slides, but help me with ESSA. Oh, busted. Acronym foul. Every Student Succeeds Act. My buddy Betsy DeVos. Unfunded mandate to the extreme. At best, it is the successor to the No Child Left Behind Act, which allows us to try and do our job with handcuffs behind our back. And if you have been following the news, you will see the extraordinary, deep federal education cuts, and more coming apparently. But the room was full of inspiring and inspired folks, and a great many of our teachers and our staff, from front office to IAs to principals to teachers across the board. And I double dog dared them because I can get away with saying more than sometimes our superintendent can, to write a one-pager about what these cuts mean to our students and make it real. And go to the legislative town halls in 2 weeks when the legislators all come home and invite their comments and make it real. And then when the legislature ends, triple dog dare 'em to spend 3 days in our schools side by side. Let's make it real, people, because the actions we've taken to date have not gotten the attention of the folks that are holding the purse strings. We got to do something different because the old ways aren't working. After that, came down here to the John Stanford Center, and shout out to Dr. Clover Codd, Human Resources Chief. Could you wave, please? Thank you. With Reike of the Seattle Education Association that put on a Saturday interview training. We packed the room. It was really well done, and it allows people that can't get off of work during the middle of the day to come down here and get their training so that they can participate on hiring committees at the schools, hopefully again to make the circle bigger and the table longer. There are other trainings that are being offered on the website from 4 to 5 p.m. several times, but let's get a larger pool of folks to pick from. The educators deserve it, the future of your schools deserve it, and if we are going to build a more diverse workforce, we've got to do this. And it's appropriate that we have training and that the folks that serve on our committees have training. So thank you very much for making that happen. Much appreciate. Seattle World School participated in a learning session with Director DeWolf, and they'll be coming for the rest of the directors to talk about theory and philosophy, and it's extraordinary. This is where refugee students come to acclimatize, learn language, be successful in a safe space, and extraordinary educators, and a beautiful new facility in the restored T.T. Minor building. If you haven't had an opportunity to sit in up there, I strongly recommend it. Frankly, some of the comments out there in social media, blog land, emails we're getting, hurt like heck. No question about it. Do we read them? I do, every darn one of them. And I believe that most of my, if not all of my colleagues do as well. We hear you. Science adoption, critical stuff. We are asking for a work session on that so that we can all get the same information at the same time, because it's such an important issue. Restoration plans, we started that conversation last Wednesday at Garfield High School. Transparency and enrollment, absolutely a critical issue, and I believe that that will hopefully be coming to both the A&F committee and the Ops committee, because money follows bodies. Staffing follows bodies, follows money. And it seems very trite to make that equation arithmetic, Director Burke, but really critical arithmetic. Our students and our staff's families all depend on that. A thank you, a shout out to Dahlia Bazaz and Neil Morton for today's front page article on special education statewide. And I made the mistake last month of saying that they had done a fairly adequate job, to which Dahlia tweeted, but she forgot to mention how thrilled I was that there actually was a wall between the reporters and the editorial board, who accused us of breaking the law. So we had a good laugh at that at Garfield, but when you watch this, if you're not watching this, Dahlia, thank you for that, because I think it brings the underfunding and the critical nature of our special ed funding home to the voters. And it's a difficult, complex subject, and they did a good job on it, and I appreciate it immensely. And yes, I will speak for the board to say thank you on that one. David Westberg's retirement. Thank you for pointing that out, Mr. Jackins. David Westbrook has worked very, very hard to make this district a better district, and we thank him for those efforts, absolutely. And I thank him for making me think harder and smarter. The concept of the strat plan, the strategic plan. I cannot say enough good things about the committee that worked so very, very hard to put that together. I admit to being a little cynical about mission statements and vision statements, because I'm old and I've sat on too many committees that work on vision statements and mission statements and strategic planning and haven't delivered in the long run. So I'm a little pragmatic on that. I want to see results. I want to make sure we stay on task. And the proof's in the pudding. Are we disciplined enough? And when I say we, I mean staff, I mean board, I mean community, to keep our focus and to analyze it. We've had strategic plans here before. I'd like to think we've made progress. Enough progress? No. Fast enough? No. But it's a heck of a start, and I appreciate that very, very hard work. The concept of trust is a difficult one. We've heard from the community that we have been breaking trust, and frankly, Seattle Public Schools has a long history of doing so. And then we have to triple down and earn it back. I would like to believe that we, as a board, have been more transparent in the last 2 years in doing our business than any board previously. I'm sure that there are those that would disagree with that. But I can assure you, and again, I will speak for the board, it is a core principle of everybody sitting up here, as well as the staff. It's a question of bandwidth. It's a question of style, but we're working hard on it. Last, it is my job, since Director Pinkham, who is the Chair of Audit and Finance, to read the following. At the March 5th Quarterly Audit and Finance Committee meeting, the Office of Internal Audit presented 2 internal audit reports, accounting and record keeping for fiber sharing projects, and Seattle World School. All findings and recommendations are discussed at a public Audit and Finance Committee meeting, and the completed reports are available online at the Office of Internal Audit's public webpage. Click on Departments and Services under the Directory tab, then click on Internal Audit. It is beyond a privilege to serve up here and to serve in this building with such great folks and with such a great staff in the Seattle Public Schools, and that means every staff in 104 schools, soon to be 106. Action items, number 1, purchasing the opening day library collections for Lincoln High School and Magnolia Elementary School, and the capacity library collections for Ingram High School and Queen Anne Elementary School. This came before exec February 15 for consideration. Motion, please, Mr. Burke.
I move that the school board authorize the superintendent to execute a contract with Follett School Solutions not to exceed $550,000 for new or expanded library collections for Lincoln High School, Magnolia Elementary School, Ingram High School, and Queen Anne Elementary School, with any minor additions, deletions, and modifications deemed necessary by the superintendent, and to take any necessary actions to implement the contract.
Second.
Thank you. I see the Chief Academic Officer at the podium. Would you like to give us a brief overview?
Diane DeBacker, Chief Academic Officer, President Harris, and distinguished members of the Board of Education. It is my pleasure to answer questions about this particular bar. As your materials reflect, this is for a collection for our 2 new schools coming on board this fall, Lincoln High School and Magnolia Elementary School. And it's also to expand the collections at 2 existing schools, as we've had added capacity at Ingram High School and Queen Anne Elementary School. You had one question last time as this was introduced. It was about if these materials would be available to visually impaired and blind students. Yes, they will be as needed, of course. That will happen through Follett, and also will happen through a partnership that we have with Washington Talking Books and Braille Library. I stand for questions.
Questions, comments, concerns from my colleagues? Director Mack, please.
When this came in intro, I didn't think of this question, but as I'm reading this, the motion, just for clarification, the total amount for all of those schools is $550,000, not per school?
That is correct. The total amount is $550,000.
Okay, and what exactly is the process for deciding which schools need how much? We've got a couple schools that are brand new and will be starting completely fresh, Lincoln and Magnolia. And Ingram is an existing school with an existing library, as well as Queen Anne Elementary. And so what's the process for deciding proportionally and appropriately between those schools what they're getting?
The process, as I understand it, and we do have Marion with us if we need to ask for clarification on that. But the process is obviously with the 2 new schools, that makes sense. With the schools that were expanded capacity, those were prioritized as needing additional collections.
I guess I see here in that bar that just more specifically, there is specific line items for each of those schools. So there's 300,000 for Lincoln, Magnolia is 153. So there are already specific budgets that are already identified, and that makes sense.
As was requested by the executive committee members.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Director Burke,
Aye.
Director DeWolf,
Aye.
Director Geary,
Aye.
Director Mack,
Aye.
Director Patu,
Aye.
Director Harris.
Aye.
This motion is passed unanimously.
Number 2, purchase of student and staff technology for new BEX 4 schools and BTA 4 projects for Lincoln High School and Magnolia Elementary School, and the capacity projects for Ingram High School, Queen Anne Elementary School, and additional portables and capacity classrooms district-wide. This came before OPS February 7th. Says approval here. Okay. Mr. Burke, motion please.
I move that the school board authorize the superintendent to execute purchase orders through various vendors for a total not to exceed $4,300,000 plus Washington State sales tax during the fiscal year 2018-19, and to take any necessary actions to implement the purchase orders.
CIO Chief Information Officer John Kroll, take it away.
Good evening.
Briefly.
John Kroll, Chief Information Officer. Since I brought this to introduction, we made slight changes based on board feedback. We changed the title so it matched the previous item, having the names in the same order. We included a link to the education specification that we're fulfilling. We did some minor fixes to the numbers, and that's it. I'll take any questions.
Comments, questions, concerns? Director Burke, please.
One kind of clerical editorial. Thank you for putting in the link to the ed specs. I just wanted, if it's possible for us to edit this, the link is actually broken. It's got a little gap in it. So people that are watching, and if they want to find them, you can just search online Seattle Public Schools education specifications, and you'll go to this website. But if it's something that we could clean up, that would be awesome, just for the record. And then on the actual purchase items, the numbers, like quantities, have been adjusted, but the dollar amount hasn't. So are those adjustments that still fit within that budget? That was essentially just reconciling, or is there a change in the dollar amounts?
No, dollar amount stayed the same. That was some small reconciling to make sure we had the right numbers, doing checks on making sure we were following the ed spec. And then I do think there was a clerical error in one of them.
Mr. Mack.
I'm curious just briefly to hear about what specifically the ITAC committee had to say around this. Did they take this specific bar in this plan and consider it and have discussion, or it says here that the ITAC committee has actually discussed this, but I'm curious to know what they discussed and what their recommendations were.
If I remember correctly, we just discussed it briefly. We did not go deeply into this.
I guess just for clarification, the ITAC committee is part of the charge to help oversee. Yeah, the Information Technology Advisory Committee. So part of their charge is to help oversee the technology plan, and is part of the agendas typically to have these sorts of bars or proposals come to them for discussion and then recommendation, and is there a formal process in that committee?
Yes, there's a formal process, and we have an agenda. And that meeting was before we brought it to Operations Committee, so I'm trying to remember back exactly what we covered, but they were in support of it and moved it forward to Operations Committee. So that was, a couple months ago.
Okay, thank you. I just, if you wouldn't mind finding the minutes to that and sending it to me, or pointing me in the direction. I'm just
The minutes
looking
are
for,
uploaded on the website.
Okay.
And I'm sure that his staff, who has been very, what's the word I want to say, forward-looking with respect to the ITAC agendas, et cetera, will assist you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. The reason why I'm belaboring the point a little bit is that we have these amazing committees that we put together, and their job is to support our processes in vetting the information. And they're formal, and so if there's a formal recommendation or something like that, it would be helpful in the future. I'm not going to ask for it to be changed here, but it would be helpful in the future to perhaps even date the meeting that happened in the bar, as if there was a recommendation, that just to be more clear that this other body did in fact have the discussion and make a
And
recommendation.
we are making sure that we have that brought to ITAC before it goes to Operations Committee.
Well, and if we're going to start having committees vote as opposed to sending us recommendations, we probably need to take a look at policy and procedure, because goodness knows I want input from as wide a swath as we can get. But I also appreciate very much that it's our job to do this heavy lifting, and it's your job to keep us very well informed. Director Burke.
I'm thinking in light of the testimony we heard from our student speaker today, and I just want to highlight for everyone's awareness that our high school ed spec does call for a one-to-one. And I think that's something that we have to be really thoughtful about, in the case of a new high school, or in the case of an addition to an existing high school, or in the case of our current high schools that aren't on this list. That's a conversation that we have to continue to put policy 0030 first and foremost.
And my understanding is that we have $800,000 set aside for Cleveland High School because it's a STEM high school and has a one-to-one. Is that correct?
Yes.
Mr. CIO? Okay. No other school has that set aside, do they?
Not specifically.
Is it in the tech plan?
In the tech plan, we have enough money to for high schools to do the same thing that we're doing at Cleveland.
Is that part of the tech plan?
That option is part of the tech plan, and that's something that we'll be bringing forward this spring.
Okay. Probably want to elevate that conversation because it's a very important conversation to have. Director Mack.
And to that point, the capital budget conversation is happening in ops tomorrow, which includes the tech plan and the line items of what's planned for 2019-20. So is there an intention to implement one-to-one in next year's budget for high schools?
There is budget in the plan for that many computers that could lead to that. It would just be a matter of how we distributed the computers. It's more of an educational choice than a budget choice. But the good thing is what we're presenting tomorrow at the ops cabinet, or the ops committee, the budget that we're presenting actually is mirrored in the tech plan.
So I skimmed those materials, and I didn't see anything in those materials that said high school one-to-one. And I sat down and worked with you on the tech plan, and it was a delight to do so, and I really appreciate your responsiveness, and I appreciate immensely the work that's being done by the ITAC. But nowhere have I seen incoming one-to-one. And we shouldn't have to work this hard to see a change in philosophy, potentially. So if we can daylight that and work together, because one-to-one is controversial. Whether or not it should be is a whole different conversation.
Yep. And that's outside of this discussion, but we are doing engagement for that. It's scheduled for ITAC. There's been engagement with all the high school principals, whether this is a possibility. On the budget standpoint, which is in the tech plan, what we realized that actually the amount of computers that we're rolling out, it's an educational decision because it's the same number of computers and cost either way. If we do carts in all the classrooms, which is the current ed spec, it's about the same amount of money. For instance, if you look at in the back of the tech plan that you saw, the amount of computers at our newer schools is pretty close to 1-to-1. But again, whatever we do, we wouldn't be calling this a 1-to-1 program because one of the key things is we don't really want to be thinking about ratios. We want to think about hitting the educational needs. So the one thing we're looking at in high school is what are the educational needs where they need the computers, especially as we're talking adoptions in the future. And we will never be able to have a full choice on our adoptions unless we have enough computers in the school. So one thought is to have enough computers in the school so students have enough.
And again, please appreciate, I'm not trying to play gotcha on it, but this is really a big deal. And speaking to ITAC and speaking to principals is not community engagement. And that's one of the reasons I'm so hot about getting community engagement rolling again. So that said, we are off track. Director Mack, and I did it, I admit it. But if you see an opening, you got to take it. Director Mack, more comment, questions, concerns, and then hopefully we can roll this through
I just
to
want
a
to make a
vote.
point of clarification that the board our job is to oversee the budget and to provide oversight. Budget is directing programs. So for us to be able to make good decisions, we do need to understand the underlying budget assumptions. And decisions like, are we implementing a program where we're going to be providing a computer to individual students in all schools is an important thing for us to understand. I'm not going to weigh in right now whether or not I like that or don't like that. But I will say that it is incredibly important for me in our conversations to have full transparency on the intention of those dollars. I'll leave it there.
Just to clarify, that is not in this bar. We kind of got sidetracked to something that might be coming in the future.
But a very important issue nonetheless. Director Geary, please.
I'm not criticizing the need for the oversight or the desire for the information. I am, however, I think that it is important and appropriate that these conversations be started in committee so that our staff is not standing up, being put on the spot. And so I'm just going to express my sort of surprise that you as the head of operations, I would love to hear you come and talk about the conversation that you had in operations because you had a really good discussion. But to start this here makes me feel very uncomfortable for our staff members. So please, committee members, try to flesh it out so that we can have a real conversation with real information here in front of everybody so that it is helpful to the public. Thank you.
Noted. Any other comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Director Mack? Aye. Director Patu?
Aye.
Director Burke?
Aye.
Director DeWolf?
Aye.
Director Geary?
Aye.
Director Harris?
Aye.
This motion is passed unanimously.
Can you
Number
turn
3.
mine up? I just can't really hear it, but maybe I have.
Excuse me?
Can you just turn I can't even hear it, but maybe that's just because I have really bad left ear.
Okay, number 3, BTA 4, approved purchase of Fortinet network firewall equipment, software, and 5-year support with Zylogic LLC in the amount of $1,718,555.55. Came before Ops February 7th, 4. Motion, please.
I move that the school board authorize the superintendent to execute a purchase order through RFP number 02849 with Zylogic to provide Fortinet firewall equipment, software, and 5-year support for a total not to exceed NTE amount of $1,718,555.55, plus shipping costs per the attached quote.
Second. Comments, questions, concerns? CIO Kroll, can you talk about what was updated since introduction, please?
Yes, since introduction, we made it more clear that this is actually a purchase of equipment. We attached the quote per Director Burke, I believe, and the breakdown of all the items being purchased.
Comments, questions, concerns? Director Patu.
Are these new equipments or are these just replacements?
This is for new equipment.
Okay.
Director Mack?
We had an incredibly thorough conversation around this item and the next item in committee with lots of great information, and I appreciate the responsiveness and updating. For clarification, is this the one, is it this bar that is getting the rebate from the federal agency that provides grant funding, or is it the next one?
It's the next one.
Okay, thank you.
Director Geary, please.
Request, much in the same way that I really appreciate it on the capital side when for these really, really big expenditures and these big project things like a firewall, I'm assuming it's replacing a former firewall.
It replaces a former firewall with.
And I guess just a little bit of historical information in terms of those really big purchases. When we're entering into a new contract, that is a 5-year contract for a large amount of money, is it possible to just have a historical line replacing firewall purchased however many years ago at such and such expense? Because I have no basis in terms of my oversight of putting this in any type of context. I don't know if 5 years contract is reasonable. I don't know if the last contract was 2 years, 10 years. The last one we bought was $3,500,000. And so just a little historical perspective is helpful to me, just as with the roofs. Like, did we replace what was a 20-year roof? Are we replacing it in 10 years? Why? Those kinds of questions. So I'm not criticizing this particular bar now, but just ask perhaps that could be considered. And if it's too burdensome, that's fine too. But that would be my request.
Director Mack.
Director Geary has brought up this point multiple times over, and I think it's a really good one because actually the historical aspect on our capital projects and these projects, if we don't have, if it's not able to be tracked or at least have some line item that, you know, something in the bar. So I think what I'd like to propose in relation to that, because it's been brought up so many times and it's not formally a part of the bar template, is that perhaps it be referred to the exec committee and or our board office policy staff to add that topic area to bars, if appropriate, to provide historical information into the bars, so that it's a trigger every time that these come forward that information needs to be provided. Just like we say title, purpose, etc. I would like to make that recommendation that be referred back to exec committee and staff to work on for the template.
I personally think it's important because I look around the length of time any one of us have been sitting on this dais other than Director Patu, and we can't expect Director Patu to hold all the information of all these decisions. And even the staff can't say that I negotiated that contract 5 years ago. So I think it is a helpful piece for all of us, and knowing that this board doesn't necessarily have deep longevity because of the burden of the work and the demands that it makes unpaid on its members. So I think that would be a good thing and helpful to all the leaders in our district.
Ellie, you got that? Thank you. Roll call, please.
Director Geary? Aye. Director Mack?
Aye.
Director Patu?
Aye.
Director Burke?
Aye.
Director DeWolf?
Aye.
Director Harris?
Aye.
This motion is passed unanimously.
Number 4, BTA 4, approved purchase of Metropolitan Wide Area Network, MAN-WAN. Sorry.
What does it stand for?
Upgrade and 5-year support with Dynetics, Inc., in the amount of $1,953,393.16. Came before Ops February 7th for.
Consideration.
Motion, please.
I move that the school board authorize the superintendent to execute an agreement with Dynetech Inc. to provide a metropolitan wide area network hardware upgrade with 5-year software and hardware assurance warranty for a total not to exceed amount of $1,953,393.16 plus applicable Washington sales taxes.
Second.
Mr. CIO.
John Kroll, Chief Information Officer. Since this came to introduction, excuse me. My son was calling me.
Put him on speaker.
One time he was at a board meeting and did that on purpose. We fixed the numbers to be more accurate, just slight change there. We fixed the recommended motion to be more clear. We added the exact quote with the breakdown of equipment, and we fixed the E-rate impact. And then Mr. Jackins asked about the exponential increase. So that was, we used to be at about 1 gigabyte in 2015 and at 8, and we're predicting about 8 gigabytes in 2021. So our bandwidth is going way up. So besides the equipment wearing out, we have increased exponential bandwidth.
Comments, questions, concerns from my colleagues? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Director DeWolf?
Aye.
Director Geary?
Aye.
Director Mack?
Aye.
Director Burke?
Aye.
Director Patu?
Aye.
Director Harris?
Aye.
This motion is passed unanimously.
Okay, question for my colleagues. Do you all want to take a 10-minute break before we walk into introduction items? We have 3 issues. The first one, I believe, will take a good bit of time, so it might be worth our while to take that 10-minute break. I see consensus. 10-minute break. Adopting a 5-year strategic plan. This came before Executive Committee February 15th for consideration. Approval of this item would adopt the 2019-24 strategic plan as attached in the board action report. This was updated yesterday, and we have before us. Introduce yourself and tell us about the updates and the process, if you would, as well. Thank you.
So I'd be glad to do that, but I believe Superintendent Juneau has a
I'm gonna
few
open up.
opening remarks, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Nobody told me that.
I guess I'd just like to start by just being very proud to bring this before the board and really just want first to thank Erin Bennett for being the lead on this project and shepherding it through the steering committee and with our consultants. There's a lot of work that went into it, so thank you, Erin, for that work. I also want to thank the committee members who really wrangled with a lot of deep issues. you know, that when we look at this plan, it is steeped in equity, and I think a lot of good and sometimes probably difficult conversations happened in the committee. Want to thank Director Geary for being the representative from the board and being really strong member of that committee and bringing it back to your colleagues. This draft is my recommendation for a targeted 5-year strategic plan to focus our resources, our work, and our initiatives. The plan reflects what I heard from our community during my listening and learning tour, my January 2019 engagements, what I heard from the board during our work sessions and retreats, and what I hear from staff and cabinet. It's important to know that the draft plan builds on our current plan and is responsive to key district initiatives, but unlike prior plans, this year's plan embodies strategic. While our ongoing operational work to provide excellence to all of our students persists, this plan has clarity around what we are trying to accomplish for our underserved students and families. This plan is more focused because there is a sense of urgency around the issues of equity and specifically racial equity in our district. You will see that clearly stated in the theory of action and throughout the document. Because of our budget challenges, we will need to prioritize even within this plan as to the focus each year to make sure we are hitting the marks. Erin Bennett is going to talk a little bit more about the process and timeline for how we got to this point before I talk about the plan in a little more detail. Thanks.
So good evening, Erin Bennett, Executive Director of Government Relations and Strategic Initiatives. I'm going to briefly take us through a couple of slides. So the first one is around the timeline and process. So from August to November of 2018, the superintendent embarked on a comprehensive listening and learning tour to gather an understanding of the district's strengths, challenges, and what is most important to consider as plans were developed for the district's future. That input, combined with feedback from an online discussion in October of 2018, helped shape the draft before you. The district hired the district management group. You'll see them referenced as DMG or DM group in the documents to support the development of the plan. I want to thank them for all of their work as they helped this move it forward. We had a fantastic steering committee. You had the opportunity to hear from several of them earlier today, but you also have the list on the screen in front of you. The steering committee members had to leave, but I just wanted to add my thanks to them. They met 6 times over 5 months, really hard conversations to get to the draft that's in front of you. I believe the only member in the room now is Dr. Clover Codd. Or maybe she was in the room and will be here shortly if I don't see her. So a big thanks to them, and also I wanted to add my thanks to Director Geary. She's been a fantastic board liaison, and I'm incredibly appreciative of the work and thought that she's put into this. So going back to the timeline, you'll see that we started with the listening and learning tour. You can see the 6 steering committee meetings that were listed there. We also had 2 board work sessions and 2 board retreats to get us to this step as well. And I did want to call out that there was a second round of engagement on a draft plan in January of 2019. I want to thank Dr. Jones and his team for leading that work. And that feedback on the draft plan then shaped what the board saw at the January 30th work session. So the community has provided a lot of input, and I just wanted to thank them for all of that feedback. It was noted that there are a couple of edits in the document that you see before you. We received a couple of suggestions from director over the weekend, and so the red line that you see in the document is from those suggestions, and I want to thank directors for sending in those suggestions. And then this is a graphic from DMG around the strategic planning framework, and I just want to call out that the document that you have in front of you takes you through the first 3 rows. So the mission and vision, the theory of action, and the priority of measurable goals. The implementation plans designed to meet those goals will include the next 2 rows underneath, the initiatives and the action steps. And I'll speak a little bit more to next steps after the superintendent offers a few more comments.
Working through this plan as well. It has several priorities, and As I said earlier, it is steeped in equity, and just thankful for the push actually from our community members to help us put it in writing for our plan. High quality instruction and learning. Our theory of action was developed by the steering committee. The intent is to ensure racial equity in our educational system, to unapologetically address the needs of students of color who are furthest from educational justice, and work to undo the legacies of racism in our educational system. Our theory of action is built on the principles of targeted universalism, and we included language in the plan to further explain what we mean. Mission and vision. These statements are similar to the current mission and vision of the district. However, key words have been updated to better reflect the district's belief and direction, and some of that came from the last board retreat that we had, and Director Patu requesting a few little minor changes, so thank you for that. High quality instruction and learning experiences, that priority. We're recommending that, it focuses on the whole child. It includes academic, social, emotional, and behavioral strengths and needs of students. It does have an intentional focus on African American males. We added language to the theory of action to respond to the community ask for that explanation of what does that mean. There was a real move by the committee to not be deficit-based, and so a lot of attempts to be asset-based in our language. The goals follow a student's educational journey from early literacy, middle school math, 9th grade, credit attainment into college and career readiness at graduation. The next priority, predictable and consistent operational systems, directly responds to community feedback around the need for predictable and consistent operations. We have a lot of conversations in this board meeting about what that means. I'd like us to get to a point where we're not hearing about the operational systems of our district, but people are showing up to hold us accountable to the learning of their children. And we have a ways to go on that. But that's why I'm really excited about this priority. Focuses on district operational functions, recognizing that families do not distinguish between schools and central office. We are a district. The idea is to focus on customer satisfaction, communication, and service performance. It's important to have a balance between surveys and other measures, and so trying to work that in as well. Recognizing the board's feedback around budget, the service performance goal would have functions establish performance indicators, and then every year a set of operational functions would be the focus to improve a level. And so those types of rubrics will be built out as part of the next steps. Our priority around culturally responsive workforce, as you know, this was a theme that I heard around the city, but most strongly came from our students and the young people in our district who want to see a teacher, an educator who looks like them, stand in front of them in the classroom at some point in their educational career. We heard it again tonight, and so I'm really glad that this priority is in there and provides us focus. We know that that's a long-term goal about recruitment and retention of staff of color, particularly educators of color, but there's also a second prong that allows us to focus on the current workforce that we have and make them more culturally responsive to the students who are in our classrooms. And so for me, it's a two-prong goal, priority. It responds to feedback from community and students asking staff and leadership to reflect diversity in our student population. And finally, the priority around inclusive and authentic engagement. And you'll see there's not a huge shift from prior strategic plans, which I think is good for continuity of the work that's been done in the district, but it does allow us to get more strategic and more focused on where we're going to put our resources and efforts so that we can really move the needle on the things that we've been talking about as a district. This priority around engagement calls out the need to work in partnership with our community in identifying the needs and determining solutions to our challenges. It intentionally says engagement is for school and district initiatives because, as we know from our community engagement toolkit, we cannot collaborate on a highest level on everything, but we are going to make intentional focus on what is it that really needs community engagement. Students are called out in this priority. I know we are all huge believers in providing students a voice in their educational system, and so there is a specific goal targeted at student voice. I'd actually like to see student advisory groups grow across this district. I think it's a really powerful voice, and I know from sitting with students, when they are at the table helping us make those decisions, we get better. And again, in this priority, there's a need to balance survey data with other measures, and so being cognizant of that as well. And so, again, just thank the committee and staff for working so diligently on creating this plan. I think that's going to root us in equity and really drive us towards doing the necessary work that we've been needing to do for a long time. So just proud of that work, and turn it back over to Ms. Bennett.
So there's more detailed information in the board action report, but at a high level in terms of next steps. So the timing of this board action is in order to allow schools the time to incorporate the strategic plan goals into their CSIPs as well as into budget decisions. As we saw in the graphic earlier, the next steps also include developing the initial implementation plans as well as action steps for each goal. For some measures, we will need to actually build or refine the tools to measure. So for example, we may need to refine the surveys and the survey questions based on the goals that are listed. The targets over the 5 years of the plan will also need to be established for the measures for which we already have baselines. The focus or the prioritization of the goals will likely occur as part of the discussion around the next year's superintendent evaluation SMART goals and the selection given the budget situation that the district currently finds itself. And then last, a multi-step communication strategy will also be used to message about the plan. And are there any questions?
Comments, questions, concerns from my colleagues? Director Geary, with a huge shout out and thank you for your work on this initiative.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure. So honored to work with the team. And, you know, I ditto all the comments of everyone who came and testified. For me, this is to potentially some of our critical, the critical members of our public. We have to, it says right there in the mission that we're going to provide excellence in education for every student. And so any hint that there was anybody in the steering committee or at any point that saw this as a diminishment of what Seattle Public Schools was going to offer in terms of education for its students is just not true. And that's why it's in the very top line. And it is true as well that it continues, there is continuity, and it goes on. But the important thing is that even with that continuity, we all know that we haven't seen the kinds of improvements, as you, Director Harris, have said. And so we can't back away from those priorities that we have said are really important just because we haven't met them. We have to double down on them. And we have to come up with a new strategy. And so I'm proud that this is really going to focus. What is it that we want to do? Let's just say it as opposed to dance around it. We've got a terrible gap that we need to continue to target and eliminate. And it is a shameful gap. And so we focus on it. And we've heard that there is a culture misstep in our schools. There's still culture that needs to be reached. And so I really believe that the focus of this strategic plan and the language that we use, the language about being unapologetic in our willingness to go into our buildings and hold people accountable for their attitudes and their beliefs around the students they are teaching is embodied in this document. Will it work? We don't know. It's a strategy. And it's one we're going to focus on. It's one we're going to shout out for. So thank you for the work in developing it. And I'm going to thank my board members in advance for their input and what I understand to believe their belief, their fundamental belief in this work.
Make you wait for it. Director DeWolf, please.
Thank you, President Harris. I don't have much to say. I know that we've certainly been deep in this work for, I don't remember the time in 2018 when you set out this calendar for this, so I know that we've been deep in this work for a long time. So I just do want to express my gratitude for the work that you've done and to organize those folks, and thank you, Jill. I'm greatly appreciative. I think you certainly have a really good analysis and critical lens around the issues around equity. So I'm so grateful that you got to be on that and represent the board. Personally, I don't have any questions, so I don't want to take up too much time. But I do want to say this. Oftentimes, particularly when I'm in the community facilitating conversations, and we were talking about racial equity and racial justice, the line I like to say is that this country really was built on indigenous invisibility and anti-black racism. And I've got to assume, one could assume obviously that our education system was deeply impacted by those values. So I see this as, while it may not solve or absolve or clear all those pasts, all those hundreds of years, I see this as a really strong step toward that future that we do want to see. And so I'm really excited about this strategic plan and really, really grateful that even our students support it. So just thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Burke.
I also echo the gratitude. I know that from the conversations I've had with Director Geary, my colleagues, folks who have been working on this, there have been a lot of challenging conversations, rich conversations, and being candid about what our reality is here in Seattle Public Schools. And so I think that has shaped this. I'm super excited about that. I want to thank staff for building out a little bit Section 12 of the BAR. One of the things that we say, in this plan is making clear commitments and delivering on them. And I've heard from people, oh, this is great, I like it, but are you really going to do it? Can you follow through with it? Will you follow through with it? And so I think that what's been added to the BAR helps provide clarity for what comes next, which is we're going to show Seattle how we're going to follow through with it. And when I say we, I mean the board, the staff, the whole group, and a little bit of a timeline, and we'll keep working in that direction. I have two clarifying questions. One of them is, they're both relating to the first priority, high quality instruction, learning experiences. And there's a footnote that defines or clarifies the meaning of high quality instruction. And so I like the edits there, but there's a specific thing that says intentional about student engagement as one of the elements of high quality instruction. And I'm a little wary because we have a lot of educational environments that could be engaging but not instructional. And so being intentional about engagement isn't really what I see as the seed of high quality instruction. So I was wondering if that's something that could get a closer scrutiny because it feels like it's a little bit limiting that we're focused on engagement. So then the other one is a little bit more substantive, and it's within those goals. We talk about under that priority, we want to educate the whole child through high quality instruction and learning experiences that accelerate growth for students of color. So we want to accelerate growth, yet our measures are proficiency. And so this came up in our conversation with the board. I had thought that we were going to look at growth measures. I recognize they're harder to work with, but proficiency, as I understand it, is typically in the 50 to 60% range is the cut between not proficient and proficient. And it's a difficult thing to measure growth when you're looking at that as your measure. So I would like to at least understand, can we use growth as a top line measure? Because it feels like that will be, what gets measured gets done.
Can I ping on his comment first? One of the things we heard from the Assistant Superintendent of Public Instruction on Saturday with the Alliance of Black Educators was OSPI is going to start measuring growth. Not proficient, because proficient is not going to prepare our students for life beyond. is not going to and is not presently. The other point about engagement, see, I see it differently, and we all know that I harp all the time, and I use that word advisedly, about engagement. To me, engagement is opening the door to quality instruction. If you don't have the conversation and you're not having give and take, you don't have a conversation. You don't have learning. To me, learning is in fact give and take. I don't see those concepts as mutually exclusive in the least.
So I'll take those one at a time, if that's all right. I'll start with the high quality. So thank you for both of the, oh, yes.
I believe that Director Mack had comments to ping off of that as well, so that you can do a tripartite response.
I'll do my best.
We're challenging you, but that's our job.
I also want to express gratitude to everyone involved in this process. I do feel like it was iterative, and that our comments were brought back, and there was, there's substantial responsiveness, and I think that this plan does capture pretty robustly what we've been talking about. The things that I wanted to kind of agree with the concern around the measures that are being stated for the high quality instruction and learning experiences. It states in the actual goal that we're focused on accelerating growth for students of color. But there isn't even one measure that reflects that. And I think it would be really appropriate that, we've got 6 measures, 5 of which are on proficiency only. I think that it would be appropriate to have a measure that's related to growth. And I understand that it's difficult, but if we actually have it in our goal, it's not really appropriate for us not to measure it. So I think that's really missing from, if we're saying that we are wanting to accelerate growth, then we need a measurement. And I understand that it's difficult to get there, and we haven't clarified exactly what that would be, but I would really like to suggest that we actually have a measure for growth, because if we're saying we're going to do it, then we need to measure it. Otherwise, maybe we should take it out if we're not concerned about growth, because it doesn't, to me, for me, it's the consistency of the goals and measuring them and holding ourselves accountable. And if we can't do that, then there's not a lot of teeth to that. So that's one place where I still have concern. We did talk about that at the retreat, and so I kind of want to say that that's an issue for me, and I'm hoping we can find a resolution to perhaps add that. The other, and I think it's a minor thing, that maybe it's just a consistency of the document, but under this, the first goal under the high quality instruction, that students of color who are farthest from educational justice will feel safe and welcome in school. One of the measures is it says student culture and climate surveys. In the rest of the document, we changed all of those, or you changed all of those, to family and student surveys to reflect that it wouldn't just be the student surveys. And I just think for consistency, it seems like a minor edit, but I just caught that one didn't get changed, and all the rest of them did reflect family and student. So I think that's just a minor edit that probably needs to be changed. Again, I really appreciate the process and the comments that directors brought forward and having them incorporated. And in particular, the BAR language that talks about the implementation plan and how that's going to go forward, and kind of the explanation around the 3 sections and the key initiatives and so forth. So I appreciate having that inserted into the BAR, talking about the approximate timeline for implementation and next steps. That's really, really helpful. What I'm still feel is kind of opaque to me is specifically what those key initiatives are going to be. because we, you know, what are the things that we are going to be doing? And that's where the rubber meets the road. And I guess I have a little bit of question mark in my mind as to whether or not we're all aligned on which initiatives are actually going to meet these goals, which actions, and what those things actually are, because we may not be seeing eye to eye on what those are. So I'm not sure that that needs to be here, but I just have big question marks about specifically what initiatives are the thing. Is it mentoring? Is it additional after-school programs? Is it actually providing 24 credits? Is it actually, you know, there's all these different things that we can do. So I don't know how to answer that question. I appreciate the timeline, but the key initiatives I think are critical to understanding to this plan. And, you know, I assume that that's going to be a robust process for uncovering as well in the future.
So I think I counted 4, but if I miss one in answering, please let me know. So the first question around high quality, I wanted to thank the directors. This is the need for a footnote is something that came up at the board retreat, so this was an add since then. The definition of high quality, we had some pretty robust conversations around the complexity of actually defining it. Also, giving yourself, there are a lot of texts that could guide this, but you also don't want to limit yourself as well, because there's a lot of work going on right now with the foundational coursework and things like that. And so we will continue the conversations and get back to you, but I will say that there probably is not an easy answer to this, but we will take a look at that one. So on that one, that was my first. Second, with regards to the request for student and family culture and climate surveys, so this also came up at the retreat, and we had a conversation about this one too. And so we added it in several other places and actually did not add it in this section because the measures in the instructional priority are intentionally student-focused. Although not listed, however, the family surveys will continue to include questions around safe and welcoming environments. So the priority itself is focused on students, but that was the reason that it wasn't included. Number 3, so I'm going to do proficiency versus growth last. So the third one that I heard, so with regards to the process and the implementation, so we were looking to the board to establish at this step the priorities and measurable goals to define then what we will go out and actually develop the implementations for. So kind of the what versus how, and we were looking for the board to set the what so that we could then define the how. You'll see in the board action report in section 12 that the development of those initiatives will be part of that, actually will be a large part of the implementation. I will say that with regards to the initiatives, we've had we call it the SMART goal process in the past, and the board's focus and prioritization will occur during the superintendent's evaluation SMART goals in this coming year. So we use a lot, we throw a lot of acronyms around, sorry, Director Harris. Specific, measurable, actionable, reasonable, and time-bound SMART goals. And so it is intentional that this step, we were never intending to come with the implementation plans done here because we wanted the direction from the board first on the what. And then the last with regards to proficiency versus growth, we also had a long, lengthy conversation about this. And we did send some information to the board, but I'm actually going to ask Wyeth Jesse to come to speak to this one.
Good evening, Wyatt Jesse, Chief of Student Support Services. So as Aaron Bennett was explaining, this has been a long-going conversation, and to boil this down to this tonight, to this conversation around growth versus proficiency, I think that the foundation, when I heard Director Geary say we have unacceptable achievement gaps, when you read the mission and it says that we have an opportunity gap, that is in reference to a proficiency rate that is usually garnered on the Smarter Balance or the state assessment. And so when you think of things like 35% of our third graders who identify as African American meeting proficiency as a district, and for me as a professional, I have to say that if we can't address that one statistic, we probably have failed. And so that's why we went to the ground, the floor of why this came through, to address those gaps. We went with the proficiency to address it and to not give ourselves excuses. It is a big district of 54,000 students. It does have 102 schools, and we will be monitoring growth. Growth can oftentimes be measured best with the leading indicators or some of our more formative assessments or interim assessments to monitor growth towards those proficiency rates. That's something that makes it a lot more digestible actually for the practitioner, the teacher, the IA, the school psychologist to look at those measures and do something about it throughout the school year as we work towards, again, proficiency.
Albright. Why is OSPI then going to go to a growth system to balance out the schools of distinction, which are 2 metric points, once a year?
So OSPI has generated growth measures in the past. I'll one up in one way to the federal government for the Every Student Succeeds Act. And when they put that out and then identify those schools, they're looking at proficiency rates for targeted populations. And then we track that over a 10-year period for those populations as they grow in proficiency on the state assessment. So that's a direction that we have to follow. We do our own analysis too about growth. Growth is, I'm not taking down growth. I love growth too. We've had many conversations around growth. It's just, we have this document, it is progressive and it is innovative, and to lose that focus on this opportunity to say that we have a proficiency rate, again, of 35% for our students identified as African American at the 3rd grade on the state assessment for ELA, we got to address, we can't lose focus on that. That's all we're saying.
Director DeWolf, Director Geary, and then Director Mack.
My only curiosity was just around the implementation timeline. What is the board's role in that, and what are kind of our levels of engagement and approval, and just curiosity about that?
So the implementation plans won't be brought back to the board for approval. However, the board will, of course, be engaged in the conversations, engaged in the conversations. I would imagine that it might be best through the committee process, but we need to establish what the best system for that is. In terms of time frame, I think it's gone now. You'll see that we have a very ambitious timeline for these. Why, thank you. These implementation plans regarding the strategic plan goals. And I do want to call out that there'll be the initial implementation plans, because to do this work really well, there's going to be layers upon layers upon layers, especially with a 5-year plan. But you'll see that that's March through July of 2019 for those divisions to do so. So the answer is not board approved, but definitely involved and engaged. So.
Director Geary and then Director Mack.
I guess we're not going to get to proficiency without growth. I mean, that's the way I see it, that we are so behind in proficiency, we need massive growth just to get there. So that just measuring, and I guess the question I would worry about, if we start making new measures, then are we creating new means of assessment? And the one thing I don't think we want to do is create more district-wide assessments around trying to get to that. But I think growth is an important thing, because we're going to have to see a lot of growth to get to proficiency, and we're already testing it, and we're going to be able to see if we can start getting more kids to proficiency, we will see that it will be reflective of growth, and we will be able to ask about that, and there will be formative measures, but they're not going to be the kind that would be as reliable in terms of the measurements. So that's how I look at it, and I don't want to drive anything for another district-wide assessment of our kids.
Dr. Mack.
I really appreciate the explanation about the importance of the proficiency. And if that's what we're doing, I don't think that the way that this is stated actually matches that, because it doesn't say proficiency in the goal. And if everything that Mr. Jesse just said and that you just said is what this goal is supposed to be about, is proficiency, I'm okay with that. If that's what we're doing. But it says specifically accelerate growth for students. It doesn't say anything about proficiency in the goal. So I'm coming back to the consistency in the document and having our goals match the measures. And I appreciate that this to me is problematic. If we're saying that we want to accelerate growth, then we need to be measuring growth. And if we're saying that we want to ensure proficiency to close the gap, then we should say that.
I disagree.
Okay. Ms. Bennett, did you want to speak to that? Chief Jesse, did you want to speak to that? And then there is Director Burke.
I would just briefly speak to it because I checked. I was reading the language too, and just again capturing the conversation. When I see the whole child, when I say whole child, there's. I mean, we already do some poor work around using only one or two measures to measure the students. That was really trying to be whole inclusive of not only the measurements on here, and some are around proficiency, and some are actually around growth. If you're talking about attendance, I grew, right? Because I started showing up to class in my own growth and think of the whole child. And so it really is not trying to say, hey, our only goal is just proficiency. It was to say growth in general. Proficiency is some things we do, growth, and just other ways of defining some of the measures that are on here, and of course our other work. So.
And on a separate note, I forgot to note one thing for Director DeWolf. The board does approve the superintendent evaluation SMART goals.
And Director Burke, please.
I think the reason that I brought it up is I'm feeling like this is a bold strategic plan. It is targeted, and proficiency does not feel targeted, whereas growth, we're identifying the students that need the most growth and putting that out there as the measure. I think it is an and conversation, because if we talk about growth without proficiency, we're missing something. If we talk about proficiency without growth,
Switches to the right.
We're talking about proficiency and growth. We have a priority that accelerates experiences that accelerate growth.
So just to kind of finish that theme, they do need to be used together, because I think if we just talk about proficiency, we're missing a big piece of it because we're trying to accelerate growth. But I just really worry that proficiency doesn't capture the importance, the innovation, and the focus that's in this strategic plan.
Superintendent Gino.
I would just add to all the conversation you've heard is proficiency right now is the measure, and that when we look at the opportunity gap and how we defined it, it is against proficiency on our ESPA. It is that we have 35% of students who identify as African American in third grade being proficient in reading. That's what defines for us the crisis and our opportunity. And of course, growth will be a part of that. But I also, when I look at growth, it's like we can move a student from A to B, and if proficiency is a C, we cannot congratulate ourselves just from A to B. we have to get them to see. And so by putting proficiency out as the marker that we have to reach, it's much stronger to me, that marker, than a growth measure. But like Wyatt said, that we will be looking at growth, and educators will be digging in and finding students individually and making sure that we are tracking them using formative assessments, interventions to get them to the goal of being proficient. For me, that's the definition of our opportunity gap, and that's where we really need to measure and be accountable to.
Okay, do we feel comfortable moving on at this point? Okay, outstanding. Next intro item. And thank you for that very, very thoughtful conversation. Much appreciated. Number 2, intro item, BTA 3, award construction contract K5106, bid number B12839 to Western Ventures Construction for the John Muir Geothermal Wells Report. This came before Ops February 7th for. Approval of this item would authorize the superintendent to execute construction contract K5106 with Western Venture Construction in the amount of $1,703,500 and no cents this time, including base bid plus alternates number 1 and 3, plus Washington State sales tax with any minor additions, deletions, and modifications deemed necessary by the superintendent, and to take any necessary actions to implement the contract. COO Podesta, take it away.
Good evening, directors. I'm going to apologize in advance in case I start coughing. I've been fighting this thing all day. This bar that we're introducing today is kind of a milestone. This is the last of our green geothermal projects. It's to sink 80, 350 feet deep geothermal wells as part of a geothermal heat pump system to provide heating and cooling to the John Muir Elementary School. The bids were, we had 2 bidders. The low bidder, Western Ventures, has done a lot of work, capital work for Seattle Public Schools that we're familiar with. The project would provide energy efficient heating, and what's nice about geothermal heat pump is it also provides cooling, which we don't often have in our schools. So we heard earlier today the interest in the district being green. We've got a track record with 5 previous projects, and we're ready to go forward with this one.
How many stories is 835 feet? Is that something like 6 or 7 stories?
It's 350
deep?
feet.
Okay.
Is the depth of the wells. There's 80 wells. Each is 350 feet. You know, depending if you're talking residential or commercial stories, you know, it's, let's say 30, 35 stories deep. And you know, that the way geothermal systems work is they provide on the constant temperature underground to be either a heat sink or a heat pump to put either heat or cool air into buildings.
Director Mack?
I just wanted to point out that the reason for consideration on this was because we didn't know the name of the bidder at the time, or the high bidder, which is the same for the next. So that's just wanted the rest of everyone to understand the low bidder, exactly. I just wanted everyone to understand that that's why it was not pushed forward for approval. It was pushed forward for consideration. That as far as I can tell from the minutes, which are really great, those are the only reasons for consideration and not approval. So
The bids came in as expected, and again, it's with a known contractor.
Director Geary, then Director Burke.
So you mentioned this is part of a completion of a green initiative.
From, yes, from BTA 3.
And so I believe I learned something at one of our Beck's Oversight Committee meetings that I just wanted to share because I didn't know this, and I'm sure perhaps, Leslie, you did, because you were in the cheap seats. But there was some recognition at, not the last Beck's Oversight, but I believe the one before, around Sharon Peasley's focus on focus on getting our district more green.
And add Kay Smith Blum to that list as well, prior to Sharon Peasley.
And so I just think it's appropriate that we as a board recognize the past members who really worked hard, and to see their work come to fruition over time, even once they're gone from the board. I think it's...
Can we have a party when this one's completed and invite
Absolutely.
all the folks that have put their fingerprints on this?
Yes.
But Sharon was invited, and she was there at the Bex Oversight Committee meeting, and she was just, I think, really thrilled to be recognized in that context. And also there are still members of the committee who continue to drill down on the district to get the longevity reports to show the efficiency. And so when we open one of these projects in the first year, it is, there's a lot of tweaks that go on. People are still running heaters and doing all of their things. And so it takes a few years to actually get the measures, but we're right at the point now where we can start actually gathering some real data around the efficiency and what we are doing. So I thought that was really exciting, and it was really neat to see her get to experience that.
And moreover, I believe, correct me, somebody in this room, we are leaders in the country with respect to green building, and our return on investment over the long term is making sense.
It
Is that correct?
That is true.
Director Burke.
Thank you. Is it typical to have a bid sheet attached to this, or is that something that's done in committee or?
Not to my knowledge.
Time we went here, we spent 45 minutes talking about it. So can we address this in the Operations Committee? Okay, number 3, Bex 4, award construction contract. This is the last one, folks. P5123, bid number B09813 to CDK Construction Services, Inc. for the Catherine Blaine Seismic Improvement Project. Came before Ops February 7th. 4. And again, that's because we didn't have the bid numbers. Approval of this item would authorize the superintendent to execute construction contract P5123 with CDK Construction Services, Inc. in the amount of $629,000, no cents, including base bid plus Washington State sales tax, with any minor additions, deletions, and modifications deemed necessary by the superintendent, and to take any necessary actions to implement the contract. Take it away, COO Podesta.
This, again, Catherine Blaine is to install steel brace frames and shear walls at the gym and the auditorium. This school was identified as part of the 2012 report of needed seismic improvements, and there's been other improvements made to Catherine Blaine over time for program improvements, but we hadn't gotten to the seismic work yet, and we've found a contractor, and we're ready to brace the school.
Mr. Burke, please.
I just wanted to make one comment that I forgot to during my comments that I need to share with the board before meetings
Please do so. Please do so.
There's Advanced Learning Task Force has been doing some work, and there was a communication that came out to the board in the February 15th Friday memo. Essentially, there's a 4-step process. The first step is around mission vision, and that came to the board for a work session. I had promised to Wyeth that I would communicate to directors and to the public, and I totally spaced it during my public comments, so I didn't want to let that go. Take a look at the Friday 15th Friday memo, and that will be reissued, I believe, at this upcoming Friday memo. So I just wanted to give people a heads up. Please take a look at it. Mission, vision, Advanced Learning Task Force, an important feedback milestone.
Okay,
Thank you.
and do recall as well that at the retreat, we talked about the option, should board members choose to exercise it, to add to the Friday memo. So again, that's a stream of communication that we can take advantage of should we so choose to do so. One page, and you put your name and the date on it. Okay, it would appear to me that we are adjourned. Thank you so much.